Okay. Hi, my name is Cameron Harris, and I did my project on vertical collaboration. Okay, so the inspo for this project was the fact that when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, I had Mrs. Gates as my teacher, and we did a vertically collaborative project with Mrs. EYP's high school class. And I vividly remember during that period of time having so much excitement being in an academic setting. And I think that having the mentorship of the high schoolers really made a big difference in how I viewed learning and going to school. So the first step of this project was, first of all, to define vertical collaboration. So what is vertical collaboration? It is mentorship or a project between different grade levels, and it can also be called vertical mentorship, and this can be used in school settings. And the most important part was to define community. And the way I defined community throughout this project was students' ability to effectively communicate to each other and students' excitement being in an academic setting. And that's how I measured the growth of whether community grew or it didn't grow during the vertical collaboration. So my official research question was, what are the effects of vertical collaboration on students' sense of community? So as we all know, during COVID-19, a lot of us were isolated for almost 2 years. And I think that really took a toll on the social skills of a lot of students. And I think it made it very difficult for students to want to work with students outside of their friend group or even talk to students who they weren't comfortable with yet. And I think vertical collaboration is a great first step in reuniting students after being isolated from each other for so long. All right, so my mentors for this project were Mrs. Gates, Mrs. Gimmel, and Mrs. EYP. And the reason that all of them were so important to this project is because Mrs. Gates and Mrs. EYP are basically experts in this field at this time because they did a vertical collaborative project before. And all of these people, they're just great educators, and I'm so grateful for everything they did throughout the course of my project, and they really made this project flow so smoothly. So the first step of my internship was the planning process. So we had many virtual and a few in-person meetings where we made plans for what our virtual and in-person field trips would be like between the high school marketing class and the 5th grade class. And during these planning periods, we also picked out what curriculum would be best for the 5th grade students to learn because we didn't want anything to be too in-depth that the project became too confusing for that age group, even though they're brilliant, so they probably would have understood it regardless. And here is a picture of one of the virtual field trips that we conducted. And during the first virtual field trip, we actually broke out into breakout rooms. And during these breakout rooms, the 5th graders learned the basics of marketing, and that was just the baseline so they could move forward in the project. And then on our next virtual field trip, that's when they gave glows and grows to the high school marketing class about the marketing t-shirt that they designed. And on the next slide, you'll actually see a clip from that. But the glows and grows are just feedback that they give, and they give advice on the logos and the colors used. And I'll show that on the next slide.
Hi, my name is Lily, and I think I like how you put the bulldog in the middle of the ribbon.
Thank you. That's Corey's idea.
Hi, my name is Stella, and I liked how you said tackle on the back of the football because I thought it really went together how everything. Hi, my name is Lily.
Okay, so you can see that they actually took the feedback given to them by the 5th grade students and incorporated that in their t-shirt design. And this was actually the t-shirt that ended up being sold, raising not only money for breast cancer, but also awareness. And this was for the Pink Out football game in October. Okay. And then next we had an in-person field trip, and this was a fan favorite. So during this field trip, we split up into groups, and the fifth graders showed the high school marketing students what they had learned up to this point. And in the course of just a few hours, they created an entire presentation and presented it in front of the class. And that was the beginning of me seeing how much their social skills had already began to grow since the beginning of the project. And then for my community service, the first thing I did was I volunteered at a field day like event called House Day at Randolph Elementary School. And during this, I just helped set up the activities and I just talked to the fifth grade students. It was really just helping to set up and help things run smoothly. But then the next part was mock interviews that were hosted by Goochland administration. And during these mock interviews, the Goochland administration asked the fifth grade students questions along the lines of, have you used Canva before? And questions of that nature. And after they had been interviewed, they were put into groups, into scrum groups and marketing groups. And these groups ended up being the baseline for a group called Youth United, which is completely run by fifth grade students, which is amazing. And Youth United, its mission is to raise money and make it to donate to places in our community. So you can see here, this is a t-shirt that the fifth grade students created using the tools that they learned throughout marketing. And for this one, the plant, that is to signal for helping the river. The hands is for helping the community, and the paws for helping animals in the community. And you can see that they incorporated symbols and colors that they learned from doing the marketing field trips that we conducted. Oh, and the high school students also gave glows and grows to the fifth grade students about their design for the t-shirt that they created for Youth United. So ultimately, what my research concluded was that vertical collaboration definitely does have a positive impact on the community and school environments, not only in the younger children, but even in the older children, me specifically. I was always so excited to work alongside the fifth grade students, just as I know so many of the marketing students were as well. And I also saw that the fifth grade students were a lot more passionate and able to speak to people better than they could before. I remember at the beginning them being extremely nervous to speak to strangers, to at the school board meeting when they were going up to people they had never seen before and giving them their sales pitch to sell t-shirts for their cause that they created. So this is a quote that I've just kept in mind throughout the course of my project. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And I think especially after COVID-19, it is so essential that we all come together and build a community again so people's experiences in school can continue to nurture them and help them grow. So the personal impact that this project had on me, first of all, it was just such a full circle moment. It was one of the first times I think I've done something a decade ago and done it again now. And it was just amazing to work alongside the same teachers that helped me do this project so long ago. And I also didn't see this project impacting the lives of more people, so many people. I thought it was going to be a lot smaller than it was. It actually ended up involving the entire community, which was something I'd never expected. And that also made a huge impact on me. So next year, I'll be attending Virginia Tech, majoring in marketing and management. And this project actually played a huge role in me choosing what my major was going to be. And this project also played a role in me deciding that I wanted to do a marketing internship over the summer. So the reason I'm doing that marketing internship is really because I enjoyed learning about marketing so much throughout this project. Ask any questions. Okay, so it's a community service-based group, and it's less of a club and more of like a nonprofit of sorts, and raising money. And the money that they're raising now will be donated to either the animal shelter, the clothing shelter and food shelter, or to a company that helps with the river health in Goochland. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And this is just for the computer. Okay. Yeah, sure. Just remember to breathe. You always go down to the next one. So down is next. Okay. Oh, okay. So you want to take the first spin, make sure it works for you. That's the pointer. Okay. And then just I don't want to go to the next slide. I'll ruin my surprise. Okay. Okay. All right. So how's everybody doing today? Gosh. Why did the chicken cross the road? Great. All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Anna Fowler, and I'm here to talk to you guys about what I want to do when I grow up. So without any further ado,
Hello, my name is Anna Fowler, and I'm a student in the third grade at Randolph Elementary School. Some of the interests I have this year are singing, drawing, and reading. This year, I decided that I would like to have a career one day as a singer. I decided on this career because I love to sing and make up my own songs. If I want to be a singer when I grow up, then the type of education and training I would need are a high school diploma. After I have this job, I do not know how much I will earn per year. A typical day in the life of a singer might look like writing songs, signing out autographs, or making a new album. I think I will really enjoy this career one day is because I love to sing. If there is one piece of advice I could give myself in the future, it would be to keep singing.
Unfortunately, my lofty aspirations have shifted a bit since I was 8 years old, and I no longer plan on being the next Taylor Swift. But when I was thinking about what to do for this project, I was brought back to that feeling. I mean, think about it. How often have you guys been asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Personally, I must have been asked hundreds of times by now. And the answer shifts so much. It's one thing to say when you're 8 years old that you want to be a princess because you like Barbie movies and you want to be a singer because you love Taylor Swift. Once you get to be in high school, you're a senior, those answers have to get a little bit more realistic. And so for my topic, I chose to learn about career counseling and professional fulfillment.
Hello.
Okay, so for my research paper, my burning question was, how does one achieve professional fulfillment? Which is a pretty lofty goal. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. And my overall conclusion was that there is no one set path to do it. There are a million different factors that go into professional fulfillment. And while it all starts off with choosing a career path, after that, things can get a little dicey, no matter what career path you choose. You want to start off by finding something that overlaps your skills, your values, and your interests. Find the overlap in that, choose a career path within that range. But then beyond that, there are hundreds and hundreds of uncontrollable factors that we all have no say over. For example, let's say you're a medical professional going into a medical field. No one could have predicted the COVID-19 pandemic, which was a huge cause of burnout, professional burnout for so many people in the medical field, professional burnout is essentially the antithesis of professional fulfillment. Another factor that can influence it is the money to get the education that you need, to get the degree that you need to get into the field that you want to go into. There are a million different things. And so I discovered that the best strategies for achieving professional fulfillment were to know a million different strategies to overcome each personal hurdle that you faced. One particularly effective strategy that I researched was goal setting, which sounds pretty simple, but it's actually a bit more complex than you would think. It's really important to choose a goal that is attainable, but still a stretch. You want it to be something to aspire to, something to work towards, not something you're going to finish by tomorrow, but you also don't want it to be so impossible to reach that it just becomes this daunting, looming obstacle in your way.
Hello,
Gosh. So for my internship, my mentor was Miss East up at the top. She is the Goochland County Public Schools coordinator of work-based learning. And she was able to connect me to counselors at all 3 elementary schools within Goochland County. So there's Miss Jackson from Bird Elementary, Miss Bland from Goochland Elementary, and Miss Graham, one of the counselors at Randolph Elementary. I worked a little bit with Miss Bland, primarily on organizing a bit of a questionnaire type group thing, a question panel of seniors who were able to go in and speak with 5th grade students about their questions about what it's like to go into high school and middle school and to pick a career and answer their questions about that. But primarily, I worked over at Randolph Elementary School with Miss Graham and her counterpart, Miss Ambrose. And Randolph Elementary does career counseling for a week every month, and they organize it by career clusters. Each class learns about a career cluster once a month. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade learn about each career cluster through those 3 years, and then 3rd, 4th, and 5th repeat and learn about the same career clusters using a different method that's more specific to their age group and better suited for them. This is an example of an activity that I observed 1st graders doing when we were learning about the STEM field. So you see they're given a handout about being an aeronautical engineer, and they're given an objective on, the highest plane, create the fastest plane, create the plane that can do the most loop-de-loops. And then they were able to make paper airplanes, and you got to sit around and they all tested their airplanes and recorded their results and learned a little bit about a watered-down version, obviously, but a little bit about what it's like to be an aeronautical engineer. Other activities that were done when learning about marketing, students were able to create a product and discuss how they would plan on marketing it, how they would advertise it, where they would do it, how much money they were going to spend, how much it was going to cost. When we were learning about what actually goes into all these different paths, and how excited they were to learn about these careers. So for my community service mentor, this is Miss Joy Ely. She is one of the career coaches from Reynolds Community College who works at Goochland High School with our Advanced College Program, or ACA. So with Miss Ely's assistance and guidance, I created an online career center, sort of like a one-stop shop. And it was a website that had a variety of resources related to career counseling. Pictured here is me discussing the ONET Interest Profiler, which is sort of like it's a website where you take a quiz. I mean, you guys have all seen websites like this before. You take a quiz, and it gives you a bunch of career paths that you might be interested in going into. And there are a million different resources just like that. But when you really get down into the weeds of it, they all have minuscule differences that make certain of them more suited than others. For example, there are quizzes specifically for your values, specifically for your skills, and specifically for your interests. Like I was discussing before, the key to picking a career that you're really going to enjoy is finding the overlap between that. You don't just want to do what you're good at, but you don't also just want to do what you enjoy doing. You have to have some sort of in-between there. And with so many different resources, it can be fairly overwhelming to try and sort through all of them and figure out what's the most helpful to you at this point in your process. So with this resource, I was able to really explore each and every one of these resources that I'd collected and discuss each of them so that when kids go to look at this resources, they're able to figure out exactly what they need and get to it quickly. When I leave Goochland High School, I will leave this website behind, give it to the school counselors here, as well as the ACA program, to distribute to kids who are struggling to figure out what they want to do when they grow up. So what did I get out of this project? Personally, I figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up. Going back to basics was really helpful. Learning about career clusters and going through all those different resources, gosh knows, I spent hours combing through them, and eventually I did get somewhat of an idea of what I wanted to do, which is exactly the goal. I mean, that's what I want everyone to be able to do, because it's scary. It's really scary, that uncertainty of knowing, especially as you get older. As I'm sure you guys all know, like when you're a senior, that question is really right there looming, looking right at you, and you have to have an answer. If I could have done anything differently throughout the course of this project, I likely would have narrowed down the scope of my research question for my research paper, as it was a bit broad and led me down a lot of rabbit holes. There's a lot that goes into professional fulfillment, and I would have liked to focus on one factor instead of just everything as a whole. And as for my future plans, in the fall, I plan on attending UVA, or University of Virginia, and majoring in political science. I want to be a campaign manager and back candidates whose values I believe in and help them change the world. All right, thank you all so much for listening. Okay, are there any questions? Definitely learning about professional fulfillment in the medical field. I mentioned it briefly, but there are so many resources on that, and it's apparently like a really heavily discussed issue, and I had no idea that it was such a problem. But I mean, there are a million statistics that I can't recite off the top of my head, but of medical students dropping out into college or dropping out once they get into their residency because they just can't handle the pressure and they're just completely burnt out. So that was really interesting. And then with my internship, it was really interesting to know just how many career clusters there are. I think they must have grown since I was there. There are like 20. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you.
So down goes forward. Down is forward. So when you're editing your slides, you always go down. So that's down. Okay. And then this is the pointer. This one. This is the laser pointer. If you want to do that. Cool. Okay. So put this on. This is for just the recording. Okay. Hold it up here so we can hear you.
Okay.
Down here it's harder to hear you.
Yeah.
And then share your stories. Like,
Okay.
Everybody's cheering for you. So and nobody knows what you're going to say. So whatever you say is good.
Okay.
Right? Like, you didn't mess up because we don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what you Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. So take it for a spin. Is it okay to see the next slide? You can try it out.
Yeah.
Test drive it.
Actually, it'll be fine because the next slide's it's a surprise, like jump scare. Not really jump scare, but
Okay, well then don't do it.
Okay.
Just leave it.
just down.
Down is the next slide.
Okay, cool. Am I supposed to go now? Thank you.
All right, everyone, next up, we have Ms. Anna Alvis.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Alvis, and today I'm going to be sharing my senior presentation, which is called Nutrition, the Key to Healing. So a little bit of background information as to why I chose this as my topic. In 2020, when COVID struck, I developed an eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, and with that eating disorder, I was exercising for up to 8 hours daily, restricting my food intake to levels I really shouldn't have been, which then led me to getting to a point where I was getting injured constantly fatigued, which ended up leading to me being hospitalized in an intensive care unit for 7 days. After that hospitalization, I was sent to a residential treatment facility, and my physical condition had just gotten so bad, and my vitals were so bad and everything that our main focus there was to get my body back into a place that was healthy. And the vision behind it was to work on my mindset too, but that ended up not being the case as to my body being in a place that it really couldn't function well. So we focused on that, and I discharged from residential after 3 long months, and I came home and I did this just hurt? I then again hit rock bottom again, fell back. My mindset had completely fallen again. I fell back and was getting injured constantly again, waking up every day with new bruises that would take weeks to months to heal, and which, as anyone would know, in a normal body would take probably about 2 months or 2 weeks to heal. So that's the background of my project, and I think it'll be it's been a really cool project to understand, and I'll get into my research question, which is, do those who comply with dietary instruction or who are given dietary aid tend to recover faster from physical conditions and wounds than those who do not? And this question kind of came to light because when I was in the hospital the second time, I met a dietitian there named Patty Bossy, and she taught me basically everything I needed to know and more about nutrition. And she also helped me get rid of all those bruises that I had, which got me the clear skin I was looking for so long. And she really just sparked my interest in the wound healing process as I asked her so many questions about it. Being a certified nursing assistant, I was very interested in it and how I was trying to get the best of my experience in the hospital, not only learning about what I could do for myself, but to do for my patients in the nursing home. So that's where my research question kind of came to light. So these are basically all of the nutrients that are very beneficial in the wound healing process. And it's really cool because nobody would really think that to heal a scratch or to heal an open wound that you would need all of these vital nutrients and vitamins, but they're also vital. And I also learned about a supplement called Juven during my internship time, which I'll also get into, which had all of these vitamins in a drink form, which was really cool. And those patients tended to heal faster than those who did not take the supplement or refused to take the supplement due to all of the different nutrients that helped heal their skin and close open wounds. For my internship, I got the opportunity to shadow 2 dietitians at Johnson & Willis Hospital, who were Danielle Dwyer and Margaret Rawls. Danielle specializes in patients who are TPN, so they were the patients that had tube feedings, they had artificial feedings. With her, I was able to go and shadow her as she went through each patient's nightly reports from the night before, and basically the day before, or from the last time they saw her, as she's in charge of the artificial feeding patients. And it was really cool because the one thing that they focused on was how much nutrition they were taking in and what it was doing for their body. And with that information, they were able to tell the doctors, like, okay, this person has the green light to go home. Like, they're stable in their nutrition and they're able to keep up with that, which is so beneficial in the healing process. And Margaret Rawls deals with patients who are more able to digest food on their own, and they're able to basically consume their own food without any extra help. Even patients with diabetes and that kind of thing. So between the two, I was able to shadow them in critical and intensive care, as well as women's health, oncology, neurology, and neonatal intensive care, which had nothing to do with my project, but was still really cool to see how they use that nutrition, how it plays such a big role in the developmental process of a newborn, which is really, really cool. And the babies are really cute. For my community service, I partnered with Ms. Lawson, who is our mental health counselor here at GHS. Together, we sat down and created an idea, and it was to create an eating disorder support guide for those who are in recovery from eating disorders. Since many people are not as educated and they don't know how to support those, even though Ms. Lawson does a great job with it. And so our goal behind that is to create a guide that gives providers or families, friends, parents of those struggling with disordered eating, it helps give them a guide that will basically go through all the disorders, their warning signs, their triggers, basically anything that they would need to know. And it'll give them ways to help patients cope with their disorder and best support them without, so they'll have a better understanding of what they're helping their patient with. So this is the cover of the support guide, and like I said, each page will go through basically everything you need to know about each disorder. And there will also be a resource page at the end, which is at the end of the book, that has resources such as the National Eating Disorder hotline, as well as the National Suicide Prevention hotline, and so many other resources such as therapists and dietitians within the area. The significance of this project would be, it not only will help those upcoming next year or other people within the school, but hopefully that book will get around to other people within the county, other schools, and other districts. Another significance is that it helped me personally with my view around body and food and nutrition. Move kind of from something that was just solely a thing that made you gain weight to something that is vital for your health, and it's something that you need basically to live. All right. What I learned about myself is that I'm crazy persistent and I do not like setbacks. But with every setback that I faced, I was able to push through it. I was able to get explanations from internships that couldn't take me in due to my age, other factors. But I also learned that I do not like to take no for an answer. So I was very persistent about reaching out to people and finding something to do for my project and getting the answers I wanted. If I had the chance to do it again, I would definitely start early. And that's my advice to upcoming seniors who will be doing this project in the future, such as our freshmen. I would definitely start early, and I would also reach out to people I know before reaching out to random people, because those people can get you connected with other people who might be able to help you. And I would also not keep your topics so narrow, be open to a wide variety of things. So if your dream internship doesn't work out, that's okay. Just have your eyes open to other opportunities, because that could be really beneficial. All right, so for my future, next year I will be attending Virginia Tech, and I will be majoring in human nutrition, food, and exercise. And I'm going on the dietetics route to become a dietitian. And with that, I plan to go all 4 years and go to their graduate school to earn my registry as a dietitian. After that, I plan to earn my certification in eating disorders as a registered dietitian. And I also plan to start an outpatient clinic. And before I start that outpatient clinic, I plan to work inpatient to gain a resume, to build a resume, and to gain just a little bit more experience so I can help my patients to my best ability. Questions? Okay. I would definitely say once that book gets out and I'm able to get it to providers, I think that will be a very vital resource, as it'll have basically everything people will need to know. But I would say if you don't know how to support somebody with an eating disorder, or that you suspect them having an eating disorder, reach out to somebody who does know, like a professional or like a therapist or a dietitian of some sort, or a counselor. Miss Lawson, she's also a great resource if you're here in the school. But yeah, definitely reach out to somebody who has experience.
And then you talked about running into some obstacles, and I'm not surprised to hear that, particularly trying to work within the medical profession. Did you run into any issues with HIPAA or things like that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So I tried to get an internship with a dietitian in the Richmond area, and I couldn't work with her due to her patient load and the HIPAA violations that it would cause. So she basically works with, her specialization is in eating disorders, but with the trauma background. So I couldn't obviously go in and just sit in with her with clients who had trauma backgrounds and listen without their consent. There was a lot.
So nice to see you. Okay, so this is just for the recording. Where can I clip it to like up on the collar? Would that be okay? And it's just gonna. Is that okay? Okay. And then this is the clicker. And so when you're editing your slideshow, the next one's always on the going down, right? So that's how it's down is the next slide. Does that make sense? Then this is just the pointer if you want to point. Does that make sense? And so it's connected. It's talking to the computer. So if you're having trouble clicking, just point to the computer. Okay, that makes sense. But down is the way we want to go for the next one. Talking, try to hold it up here, otherwise it won't actually get you. Okay. Turn that back on. Pick that up. And just share your story. Okay. You've done the hard work, and now it's your time to share what you've done. And nobody knows what the script is in your mind. So if you forget something or you think you messed up, we don't know. So just go in and share what you've done. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Samantha Lim, or do I lose it? Okay. Can I start? Okay. Hello. My name is Samantha Lim, and for my project, I decided to analyze the role of gender when it comes to elementary school education. I've always been really interested in sociology and psychology, so I knew I wanted to do something related to that for this project. And last semester in my sociology class, we did have a unit on gender and gender studies, and I saw an article about how boys were doing poorly when it came to elementary school education. That interested me just because generally when you hear about stuff like that, it seems like men typically have the advantage. So yeah, I knew I wanted to look into that, and I was also considering a counseling career. So I thought that I could combine those two and really make a good project out of it. Starting off, gender obviously plays a large role in life. Oh, and my research question is going to be, how is elementary education affected by gender? But the inequalities that exist because of it are known as the gender divide. Women are typically the ones more affected by it, as I mentioned before. But these things can affect employment, healthcare, and in my case, education. So it is a stereotype that men tend to do better in math and science, and women tend to do better in reading and writing. And while these statistics show that it seems to be true, there is really no difference in male and female cognitive ability. Some people say that male brains are wired to excel in math, but that's also not true. It's very destructive when it comes to female achievement. And the biggest reason for these stereotypes is because men are pushed to go into STEM fields, and that's seen as more masculine. So women aren't as motivated to do it. And for some reason, reading and writing just seems to be more of a feminine thing, which is why girls tend to do better in that subject. Anyways, so as you can see by this picture, there is a bit of a stereotype between educators that boys will be more aggressive and more likely to misbehave. This is really damaging to boys because of this negative bias from teachers, it's hard for them to really enjoy school and be motivated in school. And which obviously would have an effect on their learning. These stereotypes come from like media, social media, and generally like everything pushing the idea of hypermasculinity, where boys should be very manly, more aggressive, and stronger, which affects both the boys and the teachers. Additionally, boys are more likely to be diagnosed with learning disabilities, and teachers don't always take that into account. So the teaching style that they learn from may not always work for them. And there is mostly female teachers in elementary schools, even though students have higher achievement in classes taught by teachers of the same gender. Anyways, these factors, you would think that they would benefit girls in elementary schools. And in some ways they do, like the case of teachers who girls have female like role models to look up to. But again, there's this idea that boys misbehave and girls behave. But studies show that well-behaved children are often overlooked for more demanding ones. So if teachers already have this preconceived notion that girls are going to be more well-behaved, they believe that there's less responsibility for them to take care of them, especially in elementary schools. And again, because of this negative bias against boys, when a girl and a boy achieve the same scores in the same assignment, the boys receive more praise, and the girls feel like they have to work harder to close the gap, when in reality the gap doesn't exist. And again, like society and media just pushes this hyper masculine idea. There's also cultural factors, like the culture you were raised in really affects like the gender roles that you know. And for the younger generation, they're getting more involved with the internet. So social media has had a big impact on the way that they view themselves and they view others, which will inevitably have a result in their education. And again, because of social media, they tend to have a smaller attention span, which I got to see in a classroom as I was shadowing my mentors. I was lucky enough to have 2 mentors. As I mentioned before, I wanted to tie together these gender roles and counseling. So I figured that school counseling would be the good way to go. I reached out to several school counselors from all 3 elementary schools, and I ended up clicking with Miss Madison Jackson the most, just because of the circumstances of Bird Elementary School, it being like a lower income area. And when I met with her, she introduced me to Miss Kristen Dunnigan, who is the Goochland County Public Schools licensed social worker, and she was my partner in my community service project. Also, because I had 2 mentors, I got more of a perspective on my topic. And because Miss Kristen Dunnigan worked with all schools, I got more of an idea beyond just Bird. For the first half of my internship, I shadowed Miss Jackson. I don't have any photos from that just because of like privacy reasons. But I got to know her curriculum and what she was teaching the kids. There was a lot of focus on identifying emotions, and she also pushed fidget toys, which are shown to help with nervousness and concentration, which kind of addresses the issue with the short attention span. But she did tell me that when it came to male students, again, probably because of the way society teaches them to behave, they did have a little more trouble identifying their emotions, but they did understand it pretty quickly when she explained it to them. She treated all students equally regardless of gender, and that made for a really welcoming classroom climate for all students. And because there wasn't any tests or much to be graded on, it was all purely educational, so students could really learn from the lessons she was teaching. For the second half of my internship, I worked with Miss Kristen Dunnigan. She was doing this after-school program called Girls on the Run, which is meant to build confidence and encourage girls to be active. The girls were always really excited to be there, and the friendships they made kept them motivated. I could see a positive impact too from the lessons that they were teaching. Lessons focused around like friendship, self-esteem, kindness, and just other things that they might not always learn from school, like a typical classroom. I got to watch their 5K, and again, I really enjoyed watching them grow. And by the end of it, they were definitely more confident in themselves and much closer to each other. So naturally, because there was a girls program, it just made sense to have a boys one. But the issue was, Miss Kristen Dunnigan was luckily able to get a scholarship for the girls program, making the original cost from over $100 to something more affordable. But she wasn't able to get the same thing for the boys, which meant for a boy to join, they would have to pay $125. which, because Bird is Title I school, that made it so not enough students will be able to join. Me and her talked about this because, we wanted to do what's best for the students. And we decided we could make our own community service project, our own program that would better suit Bird Elementary's needs. So we created a schedule, we created lessons, and we gathered volunteers, what we named Boys on the Move, which would also be completely free of charge. From my research, and I handed the judges some of the lesson plans we have, we focused on social emotional learning. And again, I learned a lot of things from my research, and Miss Kristen Dunnigan had her experience in social work. We were able to come up with activities that would be fun and engaging for the boys. These lessons last 15 to 20 minutes, and we focused on one lesson per week so that the kids could have a better understanding of each topic, which is something that the Girls on the Run didn't always do, and Miss Dunnigan felt that it would be better if we did have more time for a topic. Currently, this week's topic revolves around self-control, which, again, because of the pandemic, sometimes kids have trouble with that. But past lessons have involved relationship building, moods, and having a growth mindset. We have currently 30 boys enrolled in the program, which were more than me and Miss Dunnigan expected. So we had to gather volunteers. We reached out to teachers and administrators who are very happy to take part in this. So we have volunteers for every practice now. The program started late February, and it's still ongoing. It's going to end beginning of May 2nd. But in the meanwhile, the boys were very engaged in the lessons, and they loved the running. You can tell by the pictures that they're already fast friends, and they like to compete with each other, which I think is something that they like doing. Yeah, the results have been better than I expected, and I could see that from the beginning of the program to now, there's been a lot of improvement in their behaviors and the way that they view themselves. So I personally believe that because of this program and the success that we've had with it, just like Girls on the Run, this can be repeated year after year. It's been really fun for the kids, and the teachers also enjoy interacting with the students. And from what I hear from them, this has had a really big impact in their classrooms. And since we already have lesson plans, I know it'll be really easy for this to repeat year after year. Okay, so what did I learn about myself and what would I do differently? I learned that while I enjoyed doing this, it was really rewarding. I didn't see myself doing this as a career in the future. I'm glad I learned that now rather than later. As for what I would do differently, I wish I had more confidence in this project starting out, because in the beginning it was so broad. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea if I could do it. But as time went on, I built confidence. I wish I had that same energy from the beginning. So what's next? I plan on going to University of Richmond and majoring in political science. I hope to, in the future, work for the government and maybe go into a career that has me travel a lot, because I've always loved traveling and I like learning about new people. So I'm looking forward to that. I also plan on studying abroad and just furthering my education and my experiences. Anyways, thank you. Any questions? Oh, yes. Mhm. I guess just knowing that things will work out, knowing I have the strength to do it, which will just, I guess, help in the future so I can be more self-assured be less anxious. Yeah. All right.
Sam, first of all, good fighters. So proud of that. Love that you learned what you don't want to do, because that's as important as finding out what you do want to do sometimes, right? I've worked with Girls on the Run in the past. I had no idea there was a cost to that. It's $125 per kid.
Well, I think Girls on the Run is more expensive.
Wow.
Yeah, they got to reduce it. I think it's either $40 or $80 for the reduced price.
Wow. Do you know what
Yeah.
that, like, I'm just trying to figure out what in the world I get for that, other than a t-shirt.
Truly, I mean, it's a nonprofit organization, so I'm hoping that the organization is constantly improving. But yeah, as far as I know, besides the lessons, I'm not sure they offer any more resources.
Wearing my equity hat, I appreciate that you made this accessible to all of the boys.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. I loved your confidence. Hey, Trevor. How's it going?
It's going.
I can't wait to hear what you've done. Share your story.
Okay.
Nobody knows what you plan to say, so if you mess up, just keep going.
Okay.
Okay? Hold that up in your mouth so that you can hear you. When you're doing your slideshow, when you're editing it, you always go down to go next, right? So that's how we remember this is down. Next is down. And this is the
Thanks.
yeah. So if you want to take it for a test drive, you do. Oh, sorry. Just remember to breathe.
Okay.
You've done all the hard work, now you just share your
Yes.
story. So you're all good.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Next up, we have Mr. Trevor Brown, also known as sometimes.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mr. Trevor Brown, and I am going to present my senior project to y'all. So my topic for my senior project was the future of commercialized energy. Now, I wanted to pick something that was in the field of physics, since I'm going to be majoring in physics next year. And I found out that I could get an internship at Lake Anna Power Plant, so I figured that I wanted to do something with nuclear energy. Now, there's already a lot of bad publicity about nuclear energy now, and I wanted to research an alternative to what we have now, which is fission. So this was my big research question: will fusion become the next big thing? So in order for fusion to become a reality, it's got to satisfy two requirements. One, it's got to generate more energy than it requires, and it's also got the fuel has to be safe and sustainable. Now, currently scientists are using tritium-deuterium fusion. This is what we're researching now. Both are isotopes of hydrogen, and it wasn't until December of 2022 that we observed in the National Laboratory of California that we can, in fact, generate more energy from these reactions than it takes to actually initiate them. So that solves the first requirement. The second is the fuel, and this is where the rubber hits the road. Deuterium is simply a rare form of hydrogen. We can find that in the ocean because hydrogen is in bonds of water. But tritium, it's a radioactive substance that doesn't naturally exist on the planet. And that's an issue because scientists have to create their own supply of tritium. And now you might ask, how would they do that? Well, we would have to use lithium. And as many of y'all know, lithium mining is extremely harmful to the environment. So the whole idea of how fusion is going to be the next big clean energy source would not be true because we would damage the environment by supplying the fuel for fusion. So what is our alternative? Well, through my research, I found something called muon catalyzed fusion. Now, all a muon is it's a fundamental particle like an electron, except it's bigger and it only exists for a couple microseconds. Now, this method only became viable recently since muons it used to cost a lot of energy and money to create loads of muons. Nowadays, it costs next to nothing. So what we can do is when two atoms are bonded together by an electron, at the molecular level, they're very far apart. But a muon, when it bonds them, they're brought much closer together, so close, in fact, that we eliminate the need for tritium, and we can lower the amount of energy required to fuse the atoms together. So for fusion, I believe this is going to be this is going to be the way that we can actually put fusion into power plants. So for my community service project, I wanted to give back to my elementary school, Bird Elementary. And I also wanted to teach children about how they can work to save energy in their own homes. So with the help of my supervisor, Ms. Parrish, I gave them a presentation about where their electricity comes from and how they can work to save it. The third grade classes got to work on a coloring activity where they would distinguish between saving and wasting energy. The fourth and fifth grade classes got to work on creating inventions and laws that would help their consumers or their citizens save electricity. So my internship, as you know, is at Lake Anna Power Plant. Now, here's a picture of the power plant itself, and then this is the lake that they built for the power plant. In fact, fun fact, there are only 2 natural lakes in all of Virginia. And so most of the lakes are artificial, and a lot of them were created by power companies to create power plants and hydro dams. So inside a fission power plant, there's 2 main things that you want to look at. We have this one loop here of water next to the reactor, and we have a second loop that turns this turbine here. So this is pretty much how they can generate power through nuclear energy. The fission reactions generate heat, which heat this water, which heats another loop of water to prevent the radiation from getting out of the containment building. And then all of that turns a turbine, which then generates electricity, which is sent to Charlottesville, Richmond, and all over Virginia. And then the rest of these systems here are actually fail-safes. So nuclear energy is actually a lot safer than we might think, simply because of the sheer amount of fail-safes to prevent these things from melting down. So when I first got there, I was thinking that we would see a bunch of people in hazard suits walking around and people working on the reactors and everything. But actually, most of the work gets done in just cubicles that you can find anywhere in America. My mentor, Mr. Miller, spends about half his time working in a cubicle, reviewing engineering designs for the plant, and the other half of the time actually on site, watching contractors and making sure that they get the work done correctly. Now, this is a simulator of the control room. Now, since the power plant was built 40 years ago, you can tell this is very much outdated. It's all analog systems. But the power plant was actually only supposed to be open for 25 years. And it's been open for 40, like I said. And that is thanks to the engineers who actually work there. Because their job is not only to fix systems that break, but also to future-proof the plant so that it can keep generating power for years on. In fact, my mentor said that they're planning to keep this open for another 40 years, hopefully. Here in this picture, we actually have the simulator is running the 2011 earthquake, which actually tripped the reactor and they lost offsite power. And the reactor operators who work in these or in the actual control room, it is their job to make sure that everything keeps working and to prevent the reactor from actually melting down. My mentor made a point to say that the one thing that prevents these things from melting down, like Fukushima, is keeping the reactor cool. If you can do that, everything will be fine. So these people train for 4 years before they can actually work in this room. And then every few weeks, they have to come back to the simulator and run through numerous tests about any natural disaster that could occur here. So my supervisor for my community service project was Miss Parrish. She's the librarian at Byrd, and she was extremely helpful. She introduced me, and she made sure that students wouldn't sit with other students that they could make trouble with. And overall, she was a pleasure to work with and made the presentation so much smoother. Mr. Miller, he's one of my mentors, and he's a construction engineer at Lake Anna. He works as a construction engineer, so like I said, he reviews engineering designs, and he showed me pretty much everything there is that he does on a day-to-day basis. And it was so fun going around with him inside the turbine building, which is the only building I could go in because the other buildings I would have to pretty much be covered head to toe in a hazard suit. And Dan Cave, or Mr. Cave, he's been in the nuclear field for about 30 years. So he was super knowledgeable in everything relating to fission, which helped me a lot with understanding how this plant works and also with my research paper, as part of it was about the process that we have now, which is fission. So my advice to you juniors out there, first of all, I want y'all to follow your interests. Even if it's hard to find something in that field, you don't want to do something you're not interested in, because you're going to have to write a paper. Everything has to be centered around this one topic. So something that's just uninteresting is going to make the project much worse. Also, be proactive. If there's an email or something you've got to send, just do it, because the longer you wait, the more they pile up, and it just gets more stressful. And finally, be patient. This is a year-long project. So you got to be patient with yourself and with the people you're working with, because at least for me in the beginning, it was pretty hard because I had to figure out what I was going to do. I had to send emails. I had to do work for Blue Ridge. And once I did the internship in community service, I felt it was all worth it. So my future home is JMU. I'm going to major in physics there, and then I'm hoping to pursue a higher degree in physics or engineering, and then I want to work for probably Dominion Energy and work in researching how they can either optimize fission or work towards fusion for the future. Thank you to all who came out, and to y'all juniors out there, I hope that what y'all seen today will inspire you to do something wonderful with your projects. The control room? Yes, actually, that is one of the projects that the engineering department is working on. If you see right here, this is actually a touch screen right here that they just added to the control room. So they are, in fact, swapping out a lot of these controls. Yes.
I appreciate that question because I was scared. It's been open 15 years longer than it's supposed to be. Trevor, great job. Obviously have a lot of expert knowledge in this area. Probably goes beyond me, so I'm taking a risk to even ask questions. A couple of things you shared as like everybody knows, and maybe I'm alone, but like I don't know that lithium mining is harmful. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like now I'm worried about that.
So lithium mining is, a lot of it's done in Chile, and what they do is they have, I'm not I don't know a ton about lithium mining, but what I know is that when they go mine for it in Chile, and there's a lot of damage done to the environment, and it's irreparable. Like they can't fix it.
In the ground. Yeah, I didn't even know. Thank you.
Yes, Garrett. So that's a good question. With fusion, it's very much different from fission because, like you said, with Chernobyl, we can have spontaneous fission reactions. When they're left uncontrolled, they can blow up and cause disaster. With fusion, on the other hand, they need a lot of energy to keep it going. So in the event that it was shut down or something, the fusion reaction would die out on its own. Yes, Nate? So my burning question was, is fusion going to be the future? And I do believe it will in the form of muon catalyzed fusion. Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to take a little break. So
You got to work with this cash. I'm jealous.
about 10 minutes, and the next presentation will start right at 10:40.
All right. So this is just for the recording. So do
Okay.
you want it on your sweater? Or,
Yeah, my sweater.
and
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
So that's the pointer. Yeah. And then like when you're editing your slideshow, it always go down to see the next one.
Yeah.
That's down.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, that does.
So take it for a test run if you want to. And then just share your story.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody knows what you're going to say, so whatever you say is good.
Okay,
Right? You
yeah.
don't have to have that script. She's the expert in this topic.
I hope so.
Yeah, so share it. That's awesome.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone, we are going to get started with Miss Olivia's turn.
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your break. So my name is Olivia, and this is my presentation on women in politics. So I chose this topic because for the longest time, I've been interested in what's going on in the world. And it kind of started when I was a kid. My parents would watch the news, and I was just always kind of there, and I would watch too. And eventually that segued into me becoming more interested in politics and how those policies impacted me and the people around me. And that got me where I am today. So my research question is, why is it important for women to be involved in politics? And it is important because studies time and time again have shown that when women are in politics, we secure lasting peace. They tend to work across party lines more, and their policies are very impactful for development. So I did my internship with Abigail Spanberger's campaign, and I actually got my internship through Instagram. Not Instagram itself, but I follow her on Instagram, and she had posted something saying how she was looking for fall interns. And this was when I was starting to think about this project and what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted my topic to be about politics or government. And I saw this and I was like, this is perfect. Like, she's a candidate I care about. I believe in the policies that she's putting forth. So why not go for it? And I got it. And so with my internship, I mainly sat in on Zoom meetings and did phone banks. And so with phone banks, basically, you can see on the right, that's when I was doing it. I would call up constituents in her district, and I would basically talk to them about the policies that they cared about and the ones that she was trying to represent. And if they had any questions at all about the upcoming election, I would be able to answer them for them. So my mentors were Jackson Miller and Audrey Cronk. And Jackson is probably who I worked with the most. He was in charge of all of the fall interns for my cohort. And he basically made sure we knew what we were doing, and if we had any questions, we could always go to him. And Audrey is who I actually did my expert interview with. She was very knowledgeable about being a woman in politics, and even though she wasn't the face of the campaign, she still had a lot to say about what it was like, and it was really interesting. For my community service, I did a letter writing campaign with some of the elementary school classes at Randolph. And so I actually got this idea by one of my friends was talking about an idea that one of her mom had given her, and she just didn't feel like it worked for her, but she was like, Olivia, you should do this. And I was like, this is actually perfect. Thank you for that idea. And I ran with it. And so I went into the classrooms and I did a lesson with them, and I basically talked to them about how it was important to, if you had any questions or issues or ideas, you should contact whoever you're representative with. And I had them write to the school board, since, you know, that's kind of very close to us, and all of the ideas that they had could be solved by the school board, or at least the school board could help them. And their ideas ranged from, some of them wanted reusable trays at lunch because the styrofoam ones that they have now are very bad for the earth, to some of them in these pictures, they're fifth graders. And so they're all very nervous about going into middle school. And they asked me a bunch of questions, and I reassured them. But one of them had an idea that they should have with the 3 elementary schools, to have all of the fifth graders come together and just everybody kind of get to know each other. So when you do go to middle school, it's not as scary as they think it'll be, which was, it was nice to just see the range. And there was more, in between, but those are just 2 examples of what they had. And my community service mentors was Jennifer Gates and Beth Ferguson. I still have lessons planned with Ms. Ferguson, and I think I'll also go back to Ms. Gates
But it was just really cool being able to go back to Randolph and work with them and see the kids. And these kids are actually really, really smart. They had ideas that I know at their age I would not be able to come up with myself. And they were just both a huge help being able to let me work with the kids and get my ideas out there and their ideas too. So the significance of my project, I think, is by working with the kids, I was able to show them that if you have any issues at all, you can make a change. Like, even if you're not, they're like 10 right now, but even if if you can't vote, or if you're not a policymaker yourself, you can still make change. And one of those ways is by, writing to whoever. And then for my internship, Abigail Spanberger did win her election in November, and while I would like to say that was all because of me, it's not. I was a small part in the grand scheme of things, but it's really nice to know that I did play a part, and I did have an impact, even if it was that small, and that I helped get a candidate up there, even though she was up for re-election, that I helped to get a candidate up there that I cared about. And while it might seem like I didn't really do that much because I was just an intern, every vote counts. And when I was talking to some of these constituents in her district, I remember this one conversation that I had with one of the voters, and redistricting had just happened. So Abigail Spanberger used to be in our district, for anybody that doesn't know, and now she's in the 7th district, which is up in Northern Virginia. And this voter didn't know that Abigail Spanberger was now representing her. And she also didn't know that Abigail Spanberger where to vote. And so I was able to help that voter figure out where to vote, and that Abigail is the candidate that they wanted, because, we went through all of the issues that Abigail cared about and what she was doing. And by the end of our conversation, they were like, okay, this is who I want to support. So I think if I had any advice for the rising seniors that are in Blue Ridge, would be to step outside of your comfort zone. I know senior year, believe me, is so stressful. There's so much going on, but I got out of my comfort zone with my internship. I could have taken the easy route. I could have done something so simple, but I decided to, take that jump. And I'm so glad that I did, because it was a good experience. And even with my community service, I mean, kids are scary. I was going into that school, I was really nervous, even though I had gone to school there. It was still nerve-wracking. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, these are fine. These are just a bunch of 4th and 5th graders. They're not going to hurt me. But, I have no regrets about this project and what I did. So yeah, and I also learned a lot about myself with it. I discovered that I get political anxiety, which sounds weird since my whole project is about politics, but I was actually invited to an election night watch party, and I was so nervous that I just couldn't go, even though that would have been really cool. And we had an intern group chat, and they were talking the entire time about everything that was going on. And when the election was actually called, that was really cool to just hear from them everything that was going on there, and seeing the pictures was really incredible. But political science is in politics is an umbrella term, and I can do a lot with it. So if I don't want to be on a campaign or be the face of a campaign, there's still so much that I could do with it. So my future plans, I don't know where I'm going to go to college yet. I am still waiting to hear back from 3 schools, but I'm thinking that I'll either go into political science or film and media, which I know are very different, but I know that in time I will figure out what I want to do, and in a month I will for sure know where I'm going. I'm looking forward to. Thank you, and questions.
Olivia,
Dr.
I'm so
Fowler.
impressed by your participation in the call bank. I can tell you as an adult woman, I would have anxiety about calling these strangers. And
It was nerve-wracking.
What right? When you talk to that one constituent and help get them on board. Where's everybody?
I was very stressed. I would get on there every time and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is too much. I was always afraid that like someone was gonna like scream at me from the other end of the phone. And I never got that, which is so good. I think they could tell that I was like a 17-year-old that was like nervous doing this. I think there weren't any lows. The only like low that was, they would just be like, I don't have time for this, which, I understand. We're all busy. I know if somebody called me asking, hey, do you want to vote for this person? I'd be like, don't talk to me. I am so busy. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. Like once you get into it, it's just kind of so easy. Yeah. Well, I was just kind of surprised by how smart they were because maybe it's just been 10 years and my memory has kind of failed me, but I don't remember being that smart then. They just, all of the ideas that they had were so good. And I was like, never in a million years could I think about doing this and think about writing it. Like they wrote like a 5-paragraph, like persuasive letter to the school board members. And now I probably could, but that's because I'm a senior in high school. But at that age, I wasn't writing 5-paragraph essays at all. So that was probably the biggest surprise. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Put this on you first. This is just for the computer. And then this is the pointer if you want to do that. And then when you're editing your slideshows, you always go down to go to the next one, right? Yeah. So push down, that's next. Just to help you remember that that's next, okay? And so you can check it for a test. Okay, so this. Yep. Okay. Okay. And then just share your story. Okay. And then you have the script in mind. Okay.
All right, next up we have Miss Amor Jackson.
Hi, my name's Amor, and I focused my senior project on cervical cancer. So when deciding what topic I wanted to focus on, I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field, but I faced difficulty with choosing what specific topic to focus on. But I was inspired by my god sister because she was diagnosed with cervical cancer at a young age, and she was told she wasn't able to have kids. But fortunately, she was able to catch it early on and recover, and she was able to have kids eventually. And that just really sparked me. And I didn't really know much about cervical cancer, even though it's like a major issue with women and the second most common cancer in women. So I just wanted to focus my research on that because I would be able to get a better understanding as a woman. And I just wanted to spread the awareness. So you may be wondering what cervical cancer is. So cervical cancer is cancer in the uterine cervix, or specifically the cervix. And this cancer is described as malignant cells, and they come from precancerous cells, and sometimes these cells, the precancerous cells, don't even turn into cancer, but when they do, it becomes like a major issue. And if not caught early on, the damaging cells will disrupt healthy cells, and the cancer will eventually enter your bloodstream and spread. So through this project, I've learned that that's why it's important to be aware, so people are able to have routine exams and able to prevent cervical cancer. And so when looking more into cervical cancer, they have one major root cause of cervical cancer, which is a human papillomavirus. And this causes 99% of cervical cancer cases. And by understanding what HPV is, which is a sexually transmitted disease, you're able to limit and understand how to shorten your chances of contracting cervical cancer. And HPV can be prevented many ways, but the two major ones is recently the HPV vaccination has lowered HPV rates, which is directly correlated to lowering cervical cancer rates. And there's also HPV screenings, which can catch HPV early on. And by having these routine screenings, you're able to catch cervical cancer early on. So for a guiding question throughout this research process is, through educating the youth, can future cervical rates be reduced? I chose this question going back to my god sister again because she was diagnosed early on, and also as a young woman, I don't know much about cervical cancer. So by having the awareness to the youth, they'll be able to understand their bodies more and be able to make the changes in order to prevent this happening to them. So for my internship, I interned at Henrico Doctors Hospital, and my mentor for my internship was Dr. Ford, and he's a gynecologic oncologist. And he was a very good resource for this, especially through my research, because he was able to break down medical terms to me and as well as put a face on cervical cancer, because throughout my days of shadowing him, I would go in and I would meet with him. We would talk about the specific cases he would be working on. And he specifically focused on female cancer. So that was perfect in regard to my research. So I would go in and he would explain the layout of the day and what he would be working on. And I was able to see the screenings and where these cells were, the specific treatment he would be doing, which was mainly hysterectomies. And then we would go see a particular patient for that day. And when we went to see the patient, he would go over why they were getting this certain procedure and made sure they were aware of it. But one particular case stuck to me when we were doing this. It was a young girl. And by getting a hysterectomy, you're basically being told you can't have kids anymore because it's the removal. So she was just like heartbroken. It really like brought like emotion to cervical cancer and how it can determine one's life. And it just like made me like take a step back and look at how significant it is. And then, but once like they knew what they were doing, they would go to the surgery, and they would either be an open surgery or laparoscopic. And laparoscopic is a robotic surgery, but it's not essentially a robot working. It was the doctor controlling the robot from elsewhere, but in the same room. It was very interesting for me because I was able to sit in and look in like 3D images of the body while he was working and see where he would make these cuts in order to perform the surgery. But I also would walk with him to the lab and look at the lab doctors as they would examine this specimen and see how they would look at the cells and see if like more needed to be done specifically in the surgery. So that was very interesting as well. And during these surgeries, these patients would have to stay overnight. And the next days, we would go and visit these patients and check in on them, which was very cool because I really got to see the whole process of dealing with specifically cervical cancer. And it really put a face on how emotional it is, because I feel like many people see the statistics of cervical cancer but don't really get that full impact. And by having that, I feel like everybody should experience that, because nobody ever thinks it can be them. But when I saw that, they had no idea it would be them, like these patients. So it just like brought like everybody should be more aware of cervical cancer. So for my community service, I had 2 different opportunities. So my first opportunity was dealing specifically with the youth, and then my second one dealt with women's health in the youth. But my advisor for both of these projects was my high school nurse, Nurse Duffy, and this was very important to me with choosing her, because I know she's a part of my community, specifically the Goochland community, and I wanted to directly impact that, leaving Goochland better than when I got here. So my first opportunity was I served on the Student Health Advisory Board, which is SHAB, and they meet periodically throughout the year to discuss health and wellness within the school system. And this year's, their major focus was the family life objectives, which are updated every 7 years. So they were last revised in 2016. So they were due for revision this year. And during this specific meeting, we had the state guidelines that we had to follow as well as the old ones. And we just sat there and had an open discussion. And I acted like a student voice and telling them what objectives would particularly influence the school the best and pertain to the school the most. So this, like, I put the school on my back sort of for the next 7 years by implementing and telling them and advising them what objectives that will specifically cater to the school. And then my second opportunity, I worked with my peer Maya Janzinski, and through the month of March, which is Women's History Month, we had 3 different speakers come in. And these speakers came in and we had 3 different subjects. We had physical health and the importance of routine exams, mental health, and then gynecologic care. And in these meetings, they were open to anybody in the school, and they would just come in and listen and learn. And they was as well able to ask questions, and it was just an open discussion, and knowing that they had peers that are here to listen to them and advise them and just have mentors and resources that are there for them. And I feel like I really provided that to them by opening up this opportunity to them. And for my significance and legacy, I feel like this has been very significant to the future generations, because I feel as if I'm leaving Goochland better than when I got here, because I've opened these resources and I've made people more aware of these issues going on in the world. So I'm also using my research paper as a way to spread awareness of cervical cancer, because a lot of people, there's a lot of resources about cervical cancer, but there are a lot of them in medical terms. But with my mentor there, Dr. Ford, I was able to simplify the terminology and able to create a more clearer picture so anybody can understand it. So I hope people utilize my research paper properly so they can become more aware of themselves. And it's also leaving a legacy, because for the next 7 years, the objectives I help will be in play and be teaching the upcoming students about family life specifically. And for my future, I'm still undecided on where I would like to attend, but I plan on majoring in biochemistry on a pre-med track, and then attending medical school, and then becoming an anesthesiologist. And this project has really helped me see that and learn more about myself, because I've realized that I enjoy helping people, and it has made me love the medical field even more, because it has allowed me to learn that I can help people as well as work. Because by seeing, like, as the doctors work, like being in the hospital, I was able to see how they were just able to help anybody, and that was their job, and I love that. So, thank you. Questions? Yes. So it depends. So laparoscopic, you have a shorter time to wait after, so you still have to stay overnight one night, but you could be released one after the next day if you heal properly. Open is more, you have to stay longer. It's just like the amount of complications, and then it depends on like what's best for your body, and specifically about like, it mainly depends on like weight specifically, and like different sizes of the organs, and it's just a bunch of different factors. Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to be a doctor, because I used to dress up for Halloween as doctors, so like that's always been my interest. So I wanted to do my senior project on my interest. So like I said, I didn't know what specific topic to focus on, but that like allowed me, my god sister influenced like my specific, like narrowing it down to cervical cancer. But my overall for the medical, that's like based on like my childhood dreams. Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Who's next? There she is. All right, so I'm gonna put this on. This is just for the computer. Okay. Okay. the screen.
Okay.
And then when you're doing a slideshow and you're editing it, you know how you always have to go down to get to the next one?
Yes. Okay. So hit
Down.
the down.
Down
Okay.
arrow.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
All
And
right.
just share your story.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Miss Isabella White.
Okay. Hi, I'm Isabella. I wanted to do my senior project on something in the medical field. I've always been pretty interested in healthcare, so I decided to do something a little like broad and just kind of what's important in healthcare, what is critical to successful healthcare. So I did my internship in Richmond Pediatric Associates. This is me getting ready to go there. It's just a pediatric doctor's office. It's actually the one that I grew up going to. This is my mentor, Dr. Gibson. She has been my doctor since I was little, since I was actually born. She held me like right after I was born. She really was super helpful in helping me like get this because it was really difficult just like finding an internship in the medical field. So I appreciated that a lot. I actually shadowed one of her medical assistants. So this is the inside of the doctor's office, and there's me inside. So the medical assistant, if you don't know what they do really, they are the ones that go inside your like checkup room and they ask you all the first questions. They get all your vitals, like your blood pressure, height and weight, temperature, and they also ask you all those questions that you get asked, like do you exercise enough? Do you get enough sleep? Do you eat enough? So, and they also do, if you're sick, they give you tests for if you need a strep test, a COVID test, or a flu test. I experienced a lot of those. That's something I thought was super interesting, getting to see how they tested for that. And like, I just thought the machines were really cool. And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting experience to see how you have to deal with different patients because everybody has different needs. There's people who don't want to cooperate. There was a lot of screaming children. There's people who are scared. There's also sometimes a language barrier. So you really have to be adaptable and be able to deal with a lot of different people. I did a second internship at Select Physical Therapy. It's in Henrico. These are my mentors. That's Dr. Friend and that's Tripper Coiner. Dr. Friend is a doctor of physical therapy and Tripper is a physical therapy assistant. It was really great to experience this. I've always been pretty interested in physical therapy. So if there's no patients in this picture because just for privacy reasons, I guess. But so if you were to see the rest of the room, there's a lot of equipment, like workout equipment, like exercise bike, treadmill, some stairs, exercise balls, weights, all that stuff that can help people with mobility. There's also massage tables. And so, yeah, I thought that was really interesting to see how people, especially in physical therapy, again, you have to adapt a lot to the patient's needs because, again, there's people who can't do things. You have to really work with the patient. And I thought it was really interesting because sometimes they have to make up exercises on the spot. And so I just thought that was really interesting. So here at Select Physical Therapy, they have all these things, orthopedic rehabilitation, pain management, pelvic health, stroke rehabilitation, and postoperative care. That's most of the stuff I experienced or dealt with or got to see them working with. But they also have hand therapy for arthritis and joint pain, sports medicine for concussions and sports injuries, prosthetics, and work health. This was really interesting to me, the work health part, because they have things in their office, like they have ladders and shovels and stuff for people who have gotten injured on the job. And so they work with them to get more comfortable on that equipment, get rehabilitated to be able to work on those again. So for my volunteering, I volunteered with Pink and Pearl's breast cancer charity, which is a breast cancer charity that they pick one recipient who has financial and emotional needs, and they raise money for them. They're currently going through treatment, and they do really good stuff. They pay for their mortgage or transportation or their treatments, or I think one time they bought their recipient a car with all the money that they raise. So I think that's really important. The second organization is Relay for Life. That is an organization that's local that they raise money to bring mammograms to low-income areas around here, which is really important because the earlier the detection, the greater chance of survival. And they go to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to get one. Okay, so this is at where I volunteered. They had a bowling tournament where they raised money for, all the money went to Relay for Life for the mammograms. And they had a silent auction, a raffle tickets, and other products to sell. That's mainly what I helped out with. I helped them get ready and set up and take everything down. That right there, that's Miss Judy Jones. She is the founder of Pink and Pearls, and I've been working with her a lot lately. I think I'm gonna work with her a lot more in the future because I just really like what she does. I think stuff that these two organizations do are really important. Oh, and also if you guys know Channel 6 News, they were there covering the event, so that was Reba. I got to meet her, which was pretty cool. So for me, the personal impact was I have always been pretty interested in the healthcare field. So I learned that I definitely don't want to work in pediatrics. I did not really enjoy that, but I did really like physical therapy. And I was really inspired by how you go with a patient in their journey and help them individually, and you spend a lot more time with them than other doctors do with their patients. So I thought that was really interesting. And I also learned that there's like a big gap in healthcare with, first of all, like accessibility, being able to even access healthcare. I think that's what those breast cancer charities that I worked with are really helping. It's not going to solve it, but I think they're making great strides. And also the emotional needs of patients are also really important in healthcare. I think a lot of people's needs aren't met. And so I think that's really important in healthcare. My future plans, I don't know where I'm going to go to college yet, but I do plan on doing something in the medical field, and I think when I'm in college, I'm going to work as a physical therapy aide so that I can get some more experience in the field and see if that's something I'm interested in. Yes. Okay, any questions? Yes. I really liked how flexible it was. It was honestly in the office, it was just very like calm and chill. And I really liked how you can, like nobody is the same, like none of their needs are the same. So I really liked how you can like make things up and have them do a lot of different things.
Stella, I was intrigued by what you said about, you were talking about how everyone is different, and you mentioned language barriers, and I'm just wondering, like, was there someone in the doctor's office who spoke a different language that was able to help bridge the language barriers, or how did you get through that?
There actually wasn't anybody in the doctor's office that helped out with that. It was usually they had a family member there who like could translate, or somebody on the phone. But yeah, I think that's a big like thing that could be worked on, I guess.
Okay, so I just clip this. Can I clip it onto your sweater? Is that yeah, that's fine. This is just for the computer. Okay. I've never used it before. It's okay. Close your mouth. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Slide. So down. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay. 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 Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Haley, and I did my project on protecting our native plants. Oh, okay. So my broad topic was environmental conservation and invasive species prevention, and that's English ivy, which is a really big invasive species. Oh. So why I did this, I've always been interested in like the environment and climate change, and I wanted to research a lesser known contributor to climate change. So my research question was, how are invasive plant species contributing to climate change, and what can we do to combat the spread? So these are some invasive species. You probably recognize them. There's autumn olive, English ivy, Callery pear, and tree of heaven. This is a map of showing invasive species spread. You can see it's more concentrated on the East Coast. That's where they're spreading more rapidly. Okay, so going back to my research question. So invasive species, they cause biological pollution because they're so rampant, and they cause rapid growth. And the reason they grow so fast is because they have less predators compared to the native species. And they emerge earlier and have a longer growing season. And they have less predators, and they overpower the natives, which is how they grow so fast. And this is a diagram I like, stages of biological invasion. But it shows you that like if you prevent it, you can get it early and eradicate it. And it's all about like maintaining the spread of it. But yeah, so you should eradicate and then control and maintain them before they dominate the ecosystem. And it's all about protecting biodiversity. So climate change is accelerated by the invasive species because they're everywhere, and it's all just about that biodiversity and protecting that. So ways to prevent invasive species spread. So you can talk, if you see an invasive species growing at your greenhouse, like if you get plants from one, you can complain to them, because there's no regulations on how greenhouses can sell those invasive species. You should learn to identify plants if you can. It's really fun. You can just use Google to like identify plants. There's also apps you can use, and you can also participate in invasive species groups, cleanup groups, which is what I did for my community service. So my internship, I interned at the Virginia Cooperative Extension Office in Goochland. It's me. They work with Virginia Tech and VSU and the USDA, and they do 4-H clubs and agriculture, that type thing. And these were my mentors. My main one was Nicole Schumann, and she was great. I worked with Kayla on some 4-H stuff and Bob with some horticultural things. That was the office that I worked at mainly, and that was my office. This was a brochure. I mainly did like office work while I was there, but I also went on site visits, which was fun. And site visits are when they call the extension office and they have a question about like plant diseases or like what kind of plant it is, and you go to their house and see. So I got to go on one of those, and that was really cool. But this was a brochure I made while I was there um, in the office. And pollinators are also really important in invasive species prevention because they pollinate the native plants. So for my community service, I worked with the Friends of the James River Park Association. I worked specifically on the invasive plant task force at Forest Hill Park. That was my mentor for that, Ann Wright. She's great. She's a retired VCU professor, and I worked along the Buttermilk Trail, and we mainly removed English ivy species and other trees that were invasive. And that's me with my bag collecting ivy. That was an invasive tree species that we were collecting. And behind us is the pile of ivy that we collected. Okay, significance. So I learned a lot about how to work in a professional setting and how to research. There's so much stuff about plants to learn, and I got a better insight on an aspect contributing to climate change that not a lot of people talk about invasive species. And I definitely look at plants differently, and I'm more environmentally conscious. And my advice is to start as soon as possible, because you should just start, and lean on your mentor, because my mentor was so helpful and she was so knowledgeable about all plants. So definitely lean on your mentor and ask lots of questions, because they can help you with your research and your research paper. In my future plans, I'm undecided for a college, but I know I want to study environmental studies and international studies and attend a 4-year college. And thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. I mean, I think that inspired me not to go into like that type of thing, because it's such a broad. Horticulture is like, I'm just like not really interested in like science, environmental science, but I definitely want to like personally do more like with plants. Just like it's inspired me to be better. But yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about the removal process that you did as your community service? Because I definitely see these things all through the county. Like, how can I get involved if I want to remove these things? How do I do it?
Yeah. Okay. It was, so I worked on the James River task force, but we just pulled it up and other weeds and stuff that we saw. But you can they have a website, and yeah, it's for everyone, and I recommend it to anyone who needs community service hours. It's a great way to like, especially in the spring when it's getting warmer. But yeah, just go to their website. Okay. Oh, okay. There's so much stuff.
I had a schedule. Hey, Gavin, any chance you want to go before lunch? Oh, okay. 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 All right. All right. No. It's okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What time? Okay. Not that much. No. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Let's take. I know Miss Bonovich getting everything. Okay. All right. So we can take a little break now. Lunch is going to be here soon. If you guys want to take a quick restroom break, then come on back, and lunch will be here soon. Slide up there real quick, okay, so that people watching know. Can I? Yeah. that's okay. I was just gonna see if you happen to want to. Oh, it's
I think it's really fake. Hello, everybody. I am presenting my Blue Ridge Senior Capstone project, which is innovation of statistics in baseball. The innovation and baseball part has really stuck out to me. So first, we're going to start out with a quote that says, my mom always told me this quote when I was younger, and it says, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, it would have said a faster horse. And this is Henry Ford in the 1920s, of course, but it applies nowadays, even 100 years later, how we need to innovate in our life and how things are changing and we need to change with them and really innovate and excel in the world nowadays. So we are going to start off with my research. Can I ditch the microphone? Am I loud enough? Okay, I'm going to ditch the microphone. So this is my research. It is the adaptation of analytics into professional sports. And we have the title Moneyball. Now, Moneyball was... Hold up. Moneyball was a book written by Michael Lewis. It was about the 2002 Oakland Athletics and how they were a low market team in baseball and they could not compete with these high market teams like New York City, LA, and all these different other things. So he created a program and used statistics to find undervalued players to help his team out. And he changed the team from being very mediocre to a 100-win season and making the playoffs. This book was then moved into a film adaptation that was starring Brad Pitt, which, as you can see right here, here's Brad Pitt. He plays Billy Beane. He is the GM of the Oakland Athletics in the movie. Clearly is Hollywoodized, but it's still a great movie and a great representation of what the book means. This is actually Billy Beane. He is the Oakland Athletics GM, the mastermind behind the really ramping up the statistics in baseball. And nowadays, it has changed for so much and for the better of how these players are getting better and worse and whatnot. So not just in baseball, but analytics and statistics have really improved to this day. This is a show called ESPN Sports Science that airs on national television. And this is showing a golfer and his backswing, the 0.73 seconds. And it's really showing how he can prioritize this swing to make himself the best athlete that he can be. There's even programs that are tracking the golf ball nowadays. We're staying on the same track as golf. It shows the spin rate of the golf ball. It shows the velocity. It shows where it lands. It shows the tilt. It's crazy what these programs are now tracking nowadays just because people are coding them and innovating with these programs. So this leads me to my internship, which I did at University of Virginia. I interned with Justin Armistead. He is the assistant athletic director for baseball administration. And I got in contact with him through my cousin. She used to work as an event manager at UVA. And I asked her, do you have any contacts that I can talk to within the baseball program, within any athletics program in general? And she led me to him. So I met him one day in the fall at Disharoon Park. Here's the UVA baseball stadium. It was for the fall baseball program. And they were taking on the Maryland Terrapins in a doubleheader. I got to sit up in the press box with these grad students that are down here. And we were all just sitting around. We were talking sports. I was asking them what they do, or how they got there, what they're majoring in, what they're doing with the team. And they were just sitting down there on their computers. They were taking multiple statistics for the team. It was really cool what they got to see and watch. They were using programs such as TrackMan and HeroQ. TrackMan is a program that tracks more of the game and the box score and the score of the game, and it shows all your player statistics. HeroQ is more of a program that they just started using that fall, and it tracks more of the baseball using the automatic machines that they have throughout the stadium. It's tracking the velocity of the baseball, the spin, the tilt, all these crazy numbers. Those are clearly just the baseline of what they have. And when I was doing this internship, I spoke to a UVA grad student that I really followed. His name was Matthew Pizzol. I did my expert interview with him, so killed two birds with one stone. And he is creating a program for UVA that is taking all those numbers from that HeroQ program, it's throwing them into an Excel sheet, and then it is creating charts for the UVA baseball players to see so they can really help out their game. And this struck my interest of what I want to do for my community service, which was recording statistics for the Goochland baseball team and creating a chart, clearly not as advanced as they had because they have automatic machines that cost millions of dollars, but creating charts that we could take and help out our baseball team. So these were my three mentors. I first went to Coach Farkas and I said, I really want to take statistics for the team and say, how can I help out this team? How can I help out showing people what they are doing right, what they're doing wrong, what we can eliminate, what we can do more of? So he was like, yeah, let's get on board. Let's try to create that. And I'll be perfectly on board. So then I went with Miss Burton and Miss Richards. They are the instructional technology coaches at our school. And I asked them, how do I start this program? How do I really take that Excel sheet that that guy at UVA was building? How do I build my own? And how do I start with the charts? And we have our final product here. So this is the Excel sheet. And we have John Doe, who is our test subject, clearly not a real person. He pitched on January 1st. In the date column in the first, we have the pitcher's name, John Doe. He is a right-handed pitcher. That's what our RHP means. He was pitching to right-handed hitters. His pitch type, he was throwing a fastball, a slider, a changeup, a curveball. We have his velocity in the next column over. And then we have location. So we have where he's throwing the ball. We have out, middle, in on the batter. And then we have high, middle, and low on the batter. Those plot points turned into numbers, which we will see in a later chart. We used it for scatter plot points. And then we have, of course, balls and strikes. Was it a ball or a strike when he was throwing? We have the numbers of pitches in the session. And then we have a unique data point, which is for another chart later, that gives every single location a unique data point. And then we have the data points. We had 434 pitches in total in all of our bullpens. So then we started taking statistics for multiple players on the team. So this is every single in and low pitch that we had in one session. We have a bunch of different names, but we all have, if we want to see what pitches are being thrown in and low, we can sort it by that. We have, you don't have to see much here because it's blurry, but we have a fellow Blue Ridge member, AJ Condry. This is every single pitch that he threw for me in a bullpen that we calculated his statistics. So this is 3 bullpens. He ended up throwing 70 pitches in total. So this is every single pitch out of the 70. And then we threw all those statistics into pivot tables. And the pivot tables are what makes the charts run. And it took a long time to figure out how to use these pivot tables. They're not very user-friendly. But we threw the statistics into the pivot tables, and voila, we created charts. So we have this is every single data point from each pitch that we've thrown. I said that we had 434 data points. In your top left, you have the blue bar is the maximum velocity that you've seen thrown. The red bar is the average velocity of the pitch that you've seen thrown. The pie chart on the right is the type of pitch, so how much you are throwing a fastball and a changeup and a curveball and I think a cutter up there. And we have the percentages of balls and strikes, so red is strike, blue is ball. Clearly you want more strikes than balls, which you got here, which is a good thing. We got the number of pitches. We have a drop-down menu of the right-handed hitter balls and strikes and the left-handed hitter balls and strikes right there. And then we have the spray chart of what we were trying to build here. So here is the live, like MLB at-bat kind of app. And this is showing, this is high, low, where the ball is being placed. So if we go back, we can see the spray chart and where the pitches are being thrown the most. So clearly we got 73 pitches down the middle. We got 71 pitches in the right and low. We can see tendencies of where the pitches are being thrown, who's throwing it where, who's not throwing it where, what we can utilize more in the zone. So now we have our John Doe because I created filters up at the top. So this is the John Doe that we saw at the beginning of the charts. So we can filter to John Doe just on January 1st and see what he's thrown. We can then filter it to AJ. And this is every single pitch that AJ has thrown through 3 bullpens. We can filter it to all of his charts and we can see where he's throwing tendency-wise over the few days. And then we can break it down and see AJ's bullpen on March 1st. And we can say he's thrown 20 pitches this day, and this is his numbers, this is his types of pitches, this is percentage of balls and strikes, this is where he's throwing it. Clearly it's a little low because there's only 2 that were high, which is technically a good thing in baseball. And, oh crap. And the significance of this is now I have showed this to Coach Farkas, and we've had conversations with players on the team of what they can do better and what they need to eliminate. And I believe that it has really helped the players. It has shown them a visual chart of what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. And they are growing with this chart just by the numbers that have been taken. So my final advice and my future plans, what I learned was how to use an Excel sheet and how to not get angry at Excel and want to punch my computer because there's a lot of fist fights between me and Excel. But it's how to use Excel and really how to read these baseball statistics and how to communicate with people who are grad students at UVA who know more than me, and how to get information, how to just listen. And my advice for future plans, don't be scared to reach out to people. I had a lot of failures in this where I reached out to people and I didn't get a response. I got the response that I didn't want. Don't be scared to talk to people. And then my future plans, I plan to go to Virginia Tech, another Hokie. It seems like there's a lot of them. And I am planning on studying computational modeling and data analytics just along with this project, because this project has really shown me a love in what I want to do. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Do you want the answer you want, or do you want the answer I'm going to give you? No, there was definitely the basics of the Excel sheet has definitely helped with the IT class. But honestly, with a project like this, YouTube is your best friend. And clearly in IT, you don't go that in depth of whatever. But yes, it did help me with basics. I knew where to start way more than if I did not take the IT class.
And as if I were teaching math at Goochland High School, I would love for you to come into my classroom and show a real life application of mathematics and why we do what we do in our math.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh.
Evan, I love your passion for this, and you obviously know so much about it and learned a lot through this. I love that you said you learned how to listen. I think that's such a valuable lesson no matter where you take it from here. I think it was implied, but I just want to hear directly from you. What was the research question?
The research question is, how is the adaptation of analytics and statistics being used in a day-to-day setting as we go into the future and the present? Yep. Yeah, I don't know about baseball is a little bit specific. I love all athletics, but my future plans, hopefully when I get out of college, that I will be working for some sort of sports team or some sort of athletic endeavor, you know, because I've always loved sports from a young age. So, yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is just for the.
Oh, okay. Fun fact, Elise might be in my presentation. Yeah. All of the middle schoolers are. Like, a bunch of the pictures from that are on there. So we'll see.
Okay, so that.
Oh, is it just? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm a tech person. I should know this.
It's all good. And then this is the pointer. Okay. And then you know how on your slideshows you go down to see the next one? Down is next.
Down is next.
That helps you remember, like a slideshow, I go down.
Got it. Okay, sounds good.
And then I do have a video on one of my slides. It was a screen recording that was like embedded, so it wasn't something that could be shared. Okay.
And we can, if it works, it works.
And if it doesn't,
we still see it.
yeah.
It's very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it wasn't something that I could share. It was like,
And just share your story.
okay.
We don't know what you're gonna say, so whatever you say is good.
Okay,
Right? Like,
thank you. Oh, I have to put my glasses on.
So just share your story. You've done
Thank you.
a lot of hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, can't wait to see.
Thank you. And don't have the mic roll off the table. I had a heart attack, but it's okay. Can I put my glasses here? Because I'm going to put them on my head, and I don't want to put them on my head.
All right, next up we have Miss Paige Coppage.
Hi everyone. My name is Paige, and I did my presentation on women in tech theater. The reason why I chose this is because I have been involved in tech theater for as long as I can remember, and I really wanted to consider it as a career path. But before I did that, something I've noticed throughout my years is that there's a surprising lack of women, specifically within tech theater, which is surprising because within the like actor field, there's significantly more women than men. So before I really committed to that as a career, I wanted to look into why that is and what challenges women are facing that are preventing them from pursuing careers. So this is a quote that I liked to keep in mind throughout my presentation. It really highlights the importance of allowing women to take leadership roles, which is a trend that you're going to notice throughout my presentation, the importance of allowing women to lead. It says, we cannot keep women in the hamster wheel of apprenticeship or assistantship. All right, so my research question was, why aren't women pursuing careers in tech theater? And what I found from my research were two very, very broad answers. And those answers were the presence of sexual assault within the workplace and the growing cost of childcare, which are unrelated and really broad. So when I got those answers, I figured it was probably really important to talk to people who are actually in the field and get some anecdotal research as well. So I did 2 expert interviews, and what I found was completely different than what I had researched online. The women who I talked to had said they'd been pushed out of jobs, not because of those reasons, but because they felt talked down to by men, specifically older men, and they felt like they weren't being given leadership opportunities. For my internship, I worked with Spark Richmond, which is a theater company in Richmond. I chose them because they are really great about being inclusive towards everyone, which is something that was really, really important towards me. This was a place that I felt safe to explore this topic in, and I felt like I could ask any questions that I wanted to without judgment or without them feeling like they had to save face. They gave me like the real raw answers, and so that was something I really appreciated. My mentors for this project were Amy Almond on the top and M. Boucher on the bottom. Amy is the production manager at Spark, and M. Boucher is the stage manager for the show that I worked on, which we will talk about now. So the first thing I worked on with Spark was a show called A Curious Incident of a Dog in the Nighttime. Something that was really interesting about this show was that the main character of this show is neurodivergent. So the cast was made out of people who were neurotypical and neurodivergent. And there was a lot of attention that was going into making sure that these rehearsal spaces were ones that were inclusive towards everyone. So that was something that I wasn't expecting, that I thought was really cool and interesting, and was something that I didn't think I was going to get out of this experience. So this is me attending a rehearsal. I'm right here, and then M. Boucher, the stage manager, is in pink right next to me, and this is me doing a warm-up with the kids. And now we have a video, a promo video for the show. Oh, there it goes. So in addition to working with the cast, I got to see the production end of things. So I had meetings once a week with the set designer, the costume designer, lighting design, projection, pretty much any tech element of the show, along with the director of the show. So we talked about things like costume and set design renderings. You can see a set design on your left and projection design on your right, which were things that we talked about at the meetings that I thought were super cool. But then in addition to that, a really big part of the meetings, which I wasn't expecting, was talking about how we can make our rehearsal space one that's inclusive of everyone. And that was something I really appreciated. So that included things like making sure that we had a very clear schedule, a very clear time for breaks. We had things like fidget toys that the kids could use to make sure that they were staying focused. So that was something that I wasn't really expecting. I expected a lot of like these renderings and stuff like that, but nothing about how to make this space a place that's safe for everyone. And that was something that was surprising to me, but in a really good way. The next thing I helped out with at Spark was their live art. Live art is a production once a year that Spark does that highlights people with mental and physical disabilities. So prior to COVID, live art was this huge festival. They had it at the Altria Theater in Richmond, which is this massive theater. They had celebrities come out and it was really, really, really big, and that's great. But then COVID obviously shut things down, and this is their first year coming back from that. And rather than going straight back into the big sparkles and all the celebrities are coming out, they decided to really focus on the heart of the issue. And so that was a really cool thing to see. They were doing a lot of rebranding this year, and I was really involved in the pre-planning for this. So that event's going to happen in June, but I was able to see all these production meetings and even give some of my input for suggestions of events that I think we could do. For my community service, I decided to do a bake sale fundraiser for the Will Sompermack Scholarship. Will was a drama student who passed away in 2014, and he has a scholarship in his honor that we give out once a year to a drama senior. But unfortunately, that fund is slowly running out, and we're going to be unable to continue the scholarship if someone didn't raise the money to put that money back in the pot. So I decided to take that on and try and raise at least one more year's worth of the scholarship so that someone can hopefully pick up this fundraiser and continue it next year. So these were my, I don't know how to point. These were my two advisors for that. I had Nicole Melton and Beverly St. John. They dealt with the money end of things, and they also helped organize some of the parent volunteers, because in addition to organizing this fundraiser, I was also the technical director for the show that we did this fundraiser during. So I was kind of running around and wearing a lot of hats, and they helped me manage that really well. So throughout a 3-show weekend, we were able to raise $425, which is a little less than half of what the scholarship fund is. But the really cool thing is that when my director saw this idea, he decided to pick it up, and we're going to continue it for the next spring show, which we're expecting even bigger audiences for, and we have even more shows for. So I'm really confident that we're going to be able to at least continue the scholarship for one more year. And seeing that someone's already picked it up and is continuing it is really important to me. The next thing I did was I served as a technical director for our middle school show. So that's something that's super cool that happens once a year, is our upperclassmen direct a show that's casted by the middle schoolers, and it's a really great mentorship opportunity for them, and it's a really great opportunity for us to be able to pass along our expertise. So some of the things I did with that was I oversaw pretty much any creative technical element of the show, so costumes, set design, pretty much anything like that I oversaw, but I also got to help pick out a crew, and that was something that was really, really fun. And I got to see all these people who shared the same interests as me, and especially with the girls, I really enjoyed helping them find a place where they can express their interests and hopefully grow into the leadership roles that I've been in, so that we can continue having women in those roles. If I were to do this project again, I would definitely focus on not just inequity between genders, but inequity as a whole within theater, because what I found, especially with Spark, is that it doesn't just exist between genders. People who are neurodivergent often have inequitable experiences, so things like that, I would have made my topic a lot more broad so I could focus on everyone. And then if I were to give advice to the senior class next year, I would say that the best project that you can do is a project that you want to do. I was really hesitant to do this because I had never seen anyone do it before from Blue Ridge. I've seen a lot of super STEM heavy projects, but I had never seen something that was performance art focused. And I was really scared because I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, but there always has to be a first person. So make sure that you're telling yourself that you can do it. In the future, I am either going to Montclair State in New Jersey or JMU, and I'm actually going to be majoring in political science and journalism, which is different than what my project was, and that is because throughout my project, I realized I care a lot more about advocating for equity than I do for theater. So I'm really glad that I had this project to kind of learn that and learn where my real passion lies now rather than like a few years and a few $1,000s down the road. Thank you. Questions? Yes. Yes. Thank you. That's what we like to hear. Yeah.
Hey, Jack, I love obviously the equity and you found a passion in that. I think for both you and Olivia that performance and political science can go together. I don't know that they're going to be totally separate, so I can see the skills serving you. You talked about doing 2 expert interviews, and I just wanted to make sure that we were clear. Were they the 2 Spark ladies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was Anne Boucher and Amy Almond. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Great job. I never paid attention. Okay. You ready? Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna put this on you first. So this is where I'm on the side. Okay. And it's just for the computer. So that Tony can hear you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So when you're in your slideshow edits, and you always go to the next slide, it goes down, right? Down for the next slide. That's the button. Okay. Next is down. Next is down. Okay. And then the pointer is right there. So if you want to none of us know. Okay. Yeah. Just change it. Okay. It's your story. Everybody else's. And you've done the hard work. Breathe. You gonna take it for this try? Like. So down. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Hi, my name is Kaya Williams, and I did my senior project on geology and coastal erosion. So I chose this topic because ever since I was a kid, I've been really interested in rocks. Basically, I just thought they were really, really cool. I remember as a kid, I would store them in like boxes in my room, and my mom would pick the boxes up and be like, "What is in here? Rocks?" And then it was rocks. So I've always just been interested in the environment and rocks, and it was kind of just like a hobby for me to look at rocks. But then I was like, let me actually look into this and see what I can find. So this is a quote by Ian Lendler. He said, "Geology is not the study of stones, it's the study of time. Rocks are the ticking clocks that measure the age of Earth." And this is like so true because the Earth is just made of molten rocks and layers of different types of minerals. And it's just like a big part of the history of Earth is rocks and geology. So my research question was, how is climate change affecting erosion rates globally, and what methods can we use to help lessen the impact? So I chose really to focus on coastal erosion because there's so many different types of erosion, and it's impacting so many different places. Coastal erosion, it's impacting every single beach and every single coast globally. Erosion is kind of defined as the long-term displacement of sediment. We've kind of all learned this in 8th grade.
but it's impacting every single beach, and every single beach is eroding at a very, very fast rate in the last decade. The life cycle of rocks, the average erosion rate used to be 4 feet a year eroding, but it's increased to around 30 feet a year. Yeah. If any of you know the Outer Banks, it's kind of eroding very, very fast. There's not going to be Outer Banks anymore if this isn't stopped. So if you've ever been there, it's not going to be there soon. So here's a picture of coastal erosion. If you're like, what is that? It's literally eroding away. It costs so many dollars to fix. It costs like the US alone $1 trillion if they want to totally fix all the erosion. So a method that is like currently being used to stop this is building seawalls around the coast, like literally building walls on the coastlines. But this really doesn't help at all. I mean, it helps, but then there's no beach. It's just sand, wall, ocean. And that's not really good for tourism at all. The Outer Banks especially, they're using a method called beach nourishment, where they get a bunch of sand from another beach and then put it in their beach. So that's kind of what the Outer Banks is doing right now. Not really good for the ecosystem because the sand in one beach isn't the same in another beach, just like the microbiology in that is a lot different. So my internship was in Luck Companies. They are a crushed stone seller. They have a lot of quarries and like mining plants. And they're also based in Goochland. So I had a lot of mentors because there's a lot of different aspects to quarry design and like mining. This is Chuck Stilson. He's the director of quarry design. This is Brian Smith. He's the mine development manager, making sure that everything is going well and that the mine is mining. Steve Moulter is the rental equipment manager. He is in charge of the grinders and the conveyors and all those big trucks that cost a lot of money. Clint Zimmerman is the mining engineer. You basically can't do anything without Clint Zimmerman. Like there's no mine if there's no mining engineer. And Bruce Faison is the geologist at Luckstone. He tests the rock to make sure that the rock is good for whatever the buyer is using it for. So if they're making cement, he's making sure that the rock isn't really weak and the cement is not going to crush under the pressure of like someone walking on it. So these are the 3 plants that I visited at my time at Luckstone. They're all granite mines. Don't take them for granted though. They're all pretty different. Even if it just looks like a hole in the ground, it's pretty different. Powhatan plant right here is right on a fault line. So the rocks are like constantly, over millions of years, they've been constantly rubbing against each other. So the rock is pretty weak and fine grained. Boscobel has Petersburg granite, which is made from molten rock and lava. And then Rockville is also granite, but they also have a cement recycling program. They're all about 500 feet below sea level, so they're pretty deep. You can't really see it from these images, but these are called benches. These little things right here. They're slanted, so they're diagonal, not straight up, and they're all about 50 to 70 feet in height. And this is the Powhatan plant, the one that looks like crushed, chewed up bubble gum. It's pretty rough in texture. This is not even the end, like the lowest it goes in the plant. This is about 200 feet. There's another whole section below it. But you can see the fault lines in the rock, like just throughout the benches. You can also see there's like orange rock right here. That's called red feldspar. And if you have too much red feldspar in your rock, it turns your cement pink. And they don't like that. And this is the pond that washes the rock away. So they have to wash all the dust and dirt off the rocks. And they actually make man-made hills from the dust because you can't do anything with the dust. So they make these big hills called berms and then cover it in soil. And then you have a hill. So core sampling is what the lead geologist, Bruce Faison, does here. They take these big drills and drill like 50 feet into the ground and pull out these core samples. And then they have to test the rock for the hardness and make sure it's like
actually granite and not like mock granite or something like that. But they're really, really cool. They store them in these boxes. They keep every single core sample. They let me take some home because I really like rocks. So they were like, you can have it if you want. And I was like, thanks. So I have some rocks at my house. That's what core sampling is. They also do surveying, which is they fly a they fly a pre-planned flight path around quarries. And the drone takes a picture like every 20 feet or so, and they stitch all that photos together. And they put it into something called GIS, which is a software that mining engineers use to, you can see they like circle inventory piles, and they use it to compare inventory from one period from another period to see like, oh, we need to get more rock because we're running out. So I spent a lot of time with the mining engineers of Luckstone, learning about like what they do, asking them questions about like erosion and stuff like that. And I basically learned you can't do anything without the mining engineers. They plan literally everything. They're also in charge of blasting, which is when they put dynamite in the ground and they blow up the rock. If people live near Luckstone, they can actually feel the explosion from their house. They get a lot of complaints about that, but and once they're done with the quarries, they actually turn them sometimes into like landfills, or they'll put water in them and make a man-made lake. So for my community service, we're not near a coast or anything, but in the middle school courtyard, when it rains, they kind of make these pretty bad like pond spots in these blank areas. So I'm partnering up with the SCA in the middle school and the PTSA to plant a native plant garden. Oh my gosh, sorry. What was I gonna say? Yeah, planting a native plant garden. The plants obviously hold onto the soil and prevent it from flooding and prevent the soil from washing away, just like erosion. Currently, it's been too cold to plant any plants, so we're currently aiming for around April 22nd, or Earth Day is when we're gonna plant all the plants. So we're really focusing on having native plants, native to not only Virginia, but also Goochland, because there's different areas where plants are native to, and making sure that the plants aren't like invasive at all. The impact, this project has had such a positive impact on not only me, but like the kids in the SCA. I'm currently working with them right now on the project. I'm teaching them about erosion and geology and like educating them on like what plants you can put here, what plants you can't put here. And if you plant a tree in the courtyard, it's gonna break the walls, so we can't plant a fern, or like, not a fern, you can't plant a tree. But which leads me to my future plans. This has made me really want to go into geology as a degree. So I'm planning to go to James Madison University in the fall and majoring in environmental science and environmental protection and geology, one of those three. But if I had to give advice to anyone that wanted to, like juniors next year, definitely start early, and also don't be afraid to go into something. When I thought of going into geology, I was like, no way, like what does a geologist even do? They do a lot of stuff. Also, sorry, I'm out of breath. Geology, also don't be afraid to reach out to people. I reached out to a woman and I was like, can I intern with you? And she was like, this is based out of my house. No, you can't intern with me. So just email so many people. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna work out, and you're gonna love it. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
First off, as a former environmental science minerals are but one of my questions was about the what you're doing with the SCA. Have you talked to them about like, so you know it kind of floods when it rains? Are you guys building that into mean, okay, it's still gonna flood even if we have plants and stuff, what you're gonna do with that water so that it doesn't erode away any mulch or plants.
Yeah, we were going to kind of create like a little rain garden system that like kind of catches the water and like puts it to other places in the courtyard because the courtyard's pretty big. The kids don't really, I love them very much. They don't really understand when I'm trying to tell them that. They're like, we can't just like pick up the water and like put it in a rain barrel. And I'm like, not really. But yeah, we're trying to make a system where like the soil catches it, but also gets put to other parts of the courtyard. So yeah. I was seeing myself more like geology conservation, not like conserving like rocks and stuff, but like using geology to conserve environments. Not really so much as mining engineering, because mining is kind of very harmful for the environment, unfortunately. But it was really cool seeing all these people that like they got degrees in geology and they're like, I use it like daily. And I was like, oh, so I can actually go into this. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I love your presentation. I didn't find rock scoring at all, and you obviously knew a lot of the terminology and learned so much about it. One of the things that I will take away is that fact you shared towards the beginning that we've gone from 4 foot of erosion on our sea line to 30 feet per year, and I'm just wondering what is contributing to that? Why is it so much faster now?
Yeah, so climate change is really contributing to that. Climate change has led to like stronger weather patterns. So like storms, the rain is a lot more intense. So it's washing the sediment away from coastlines. There's faster wind speeds, which pick up the sand and put it other places. Melting of glaciers is also really contributing to that because it's raising the sea level, and then the tides are constantly washing away the coasts. I think in like 50 years, they said 40% of all the beaches on Earth are going to be totally eroded away. So yeah. Yes. Wednesdays. Yes. Not long. No. It's sinking and eroding. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, thank you.
All right, you ready? Okay, hi, how are you doing? So your one collar's in and one collar's out. Which way are you going with that?
Oh,
Pick a
what
side.
in the world?
So
one color's in, one color's out?
So the white collar is in on this side and out on that side. Which way do you want to go with it?
Let's get it out.
Get it out? Okay. You want it both over your other? Like that? Like that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I just wanted it to be the same on both sides,
Thank you.
right? Okay. Okay. This is just for the recording.
Okay.
Okay. This is for us to hear you, so hold it up here because down
Okay.
here doesn't do you any good.
I got you.
Okay. We give that to you, and then this is the clicker.
Is this on?
It's on.
Okay. Don't talk to it.
So you know when you do your editing for your slides,
Mhm.
you always have to go down to get to the next one.
Right.
It's down.
You go down.
Down. Okay. When I'm
Okay.
editing my slides, I go down to the next one. That's how I get there.
I got you.
Okay. And then this is the little like pointer if you want to
Okay.
do that.
So just down and pointer. We're
Yeah.
good.
Whatever you
Easy.
need. Just share your story.
That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not nervous, man.
No, that's good. I'm glad. I can't wait to hear it.
I was born ready.
Next up, we have Mr. Mason Gregory.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mason Gregory, and my project was about sustainability and civil engineering. I chose this topic because I've always been interested in engineering since I came into high school. Obviously, last year I did the intro to engineering, got me much more intrigued into it. And so this year for the project, I was like, why not do engineering? And more importantly, the world is a place we need to take care of, so why not put them together? This is my mentor. This is Greg Nelson. He's actually doing, he designed the new elementary school being built right across the road. I got in touch with him through Dr. Rayleigh. He works at Timmons Group, and he's a part of the land development sector there. I did most of my internship with him. He helped me through my community service and talked to me about the new elementary school, what he does there, things like that. So for my internship, this is Timmons Group. This is their headquarters. They're based in Richmond. They have 800 plus employees. Not all of them work in this building. There's probably half of them, maybe 450 people that work in this building. The rest of them are kind of scattered throughout the East Coast. They work all across the region, this region, East Coast. They move a little bit into the Midwest. They have so many different sectors. And yeah, so this was my schedule when I went there. I went there about 3 times a week for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, starting in November. And as you can see with the group section right here, they have so many different kinds of groups. They have education, landscape architecture, transportation, traffic analysis, energy and renewables. I went back to energy and renewables this day. Bridges and structures, environmental, public safety, and water, wastewater, and stormwater. And they all do totally different things, even though they're all civil engineers. Not all of them are complete civil engineers, like landscape architecture, that's its own major at some colleges. Environmental, not all of them have engineering majors. Some of them are like science, biology, things like that, working there. But I got to meet over 40 plus people there. It was about three different engineers per sector. And they all do totally different things. Education, which is more focused on the schools, which is where Greg Nelson works. That's his main area, but he also works a little bit into the transportation, because he also helped with the fixing of the parking lot out front of the high school. And I also got to meet, there was this young guy, he was 22 years old, who designed the front parking lot of the school, which was pretty interesting to learn that somebody fresh out of college can do that. So let me go back up. One of the most interesting things was the energy and renewables, and that was where I learned most about the sustainability portion. I really just went in there and kind of listened to all of them because they're all super brilliant. Of course, they know a lot about what they're doing there, a lot about their certain sector. And so the man that I worked with, his name was Dan Jameson, and that's where I learned most about the sustainability portion of what they do. They all kind of do something in terms of sustainability, but the energy and renewables portion is where they really focus on it. They really focus on trying to move away from like, not really nuclear stuff, but like they try and focus on more like renewable energy. For example, like solar panels, wind farms, stuff like that. So one of the more interesting things were solar panels. And so what they do is the solar panel farms is a new development, technically, in the eyes of engineering. It's like about 10 years old. They just started doing it a lot more. And so what the solar panels are is they will set up one day facing the sun. And so throughout the day, they're on a timer. As the sun goes on, the solar panels will follow. And then at the night reset, which causes a lot of problems because let's say it's a rainy day and they're following on their timer and it sits flat. And then all of the water sits right on top of the solar panel and then dumps off. And so they have to follow a lot of regulations. The engineers have to follow regulations on how much stormwater they let into rivers. So then it causes a problem with the state of Virginia because they have codes that they have to follow into how much, for Virginia, it's how much phosphorus goes into our rivers. And so sometimes they'll flip it and be like, solar panels, they're okay. You don't have to have a basin for them where the water runs into, and then there's holes in the basin, and so water's being let out into the river at a certain rate so that there's not enough phosphorus going in there so that they get in trouble. But sometimes they'll just flip it around, and then they have to change what they do with their solar panels, a new design. And so if they have them sit, which is what these just sit all day. And then let's say Virginia decides to switch it back and then they can't move it, but these have, and then they are able to move them. And then these are just sitting there, and then they're not getting as much energy for people's homes, businesses, stuff like that. And this is a LEED standard, which is something that the U.S. Green Building Council created. It's a globally recognized like ranking system almost for new projects. And so this is LEED certified, which is the lowest, but it's still really good. And then silver, gold, platinum, it goes right to left. And so what it is new projects based on how much carbon emissions they have, based on the stormwater qualifications that they follow. And it depends on project to project as well. So it can be residential, education, roadways, apartment complexes, whatever it is. They can all have a certain LEED standard, and then different qualifications go up or down. So if it's a big carbon emission project, I'm not sure what that would entitle, but then they keep the carbons to a low, they would earn more points on the scale to get gold or silver. And my mentor, Mr. Nelson, actually told me about this and broke it down as the more money you have is the higher LEED standard you're able to have, because if you want to have sustainable projects, you have to put a lot of money into it. And so federal projects tend to reach the platinum standard, state tend to meet gold, and then gold or silver, whichever one. And then maybe a small developer who really, really enjoys sustainable engineering and has the money who's able to reach just a LEED certified standard. And so what they're able to do is kind of set a precedent for new projects to be able to set a goal to reach, so that while it's not required, it's really helpful to the environment if you do follow this. And so what I did for my community service, obviously I can't design my own building or anything like that. So I worked with Habitat for Humanity here, obvious reasons, going out helping with building homes for people, which of course had to be designed. And I felt like that wasn't enough, so I'm going to Goochland Elementary School with fifth grade STEM students, and I'm having them go through a design process where I'm letting them pretty much design whatever they want to, out of like popsicle sticks. What are those little things called that you can bend and they're fuzzy? Pipe cleaners, that's what they're called. I lost it. And they can draw it on a piece of paper if it's something that they can't make. But a design process basically looks like what we used to do in elementary school, where you brainstorm a bunch of stuff down, you write it all down on a piece of paper, you cut stuff out, and then you're able to, bless you, Ms. Fallon. And then you're able to work with the team and then make your own project. And so this is my research question: how effective are sustainability practices used by civil engineers? And so from the solar panel example, it's difficult to tell because sometimes it'll change based on the state of Virginia. Sometimes they're letting, once that solar panel, all the water, and they dump it all, that's a lot of phosphorus going in there because let's say they allow them to do it. And so I did expert interviews with Mr. Nelson, he's back again, and he broke it down as however much money you have, you're able to reach certain standards. I also interviewed Mr. McKnight, and he's a landscape architect, so he does something a little different. He basically takes what civil engineers do and just changes it totally different, and it's all about, he makes a project all about how you feel as you walk past. So have you ever been walking past a building and it's like, wow, this building looks really, really pretty. There's a bunch of plants in front. They have plants on the walls. They have green everything pretty much, instead of just being a bland, boring building like Mr. Nelson would design. In Mr. Nelson's eyes, it would just be a school with a parking lot and some buses and some streetlights. Mr. McKnight says, that looks awful. I'm going to put some plants down. And Mr. Nelson's like, that's going to cost too much money. And so Mr. McKnight says, okay, let me take some plants away. And so they kind of compromise. Like Mr. Nelson's over here, Mr. McKnight's over here. They meet in the middle. They send it to the client, whether it's a county, a certain developer, something like that. And then they come together and they make that kind of statement. And so Mr. McKnight was able to offer some insight about this. He worked with a man in Charlottesville who realized he wanted to build a solar panel farm, and he knew it was going to be his backyard. He really, really wanted to do it right, and he had the money to do so. So he was able to create this solar panel farm in the right way, and I'm not sure what he got on the LEED standard. It was something. And it was really helpful to gain that energy from the solar panels effectively. And I read an article from a civil engineer from Western Kentucky University who summed it up perfectly. He said that in the eyes of engineering, sustainability is the most important, but it's super expensive to do. And so what we have to do is to find a cost-effective way to provide sustainability practices, but still be able to provide what the client wants. So let's say the client doesn't have that much money to produce this project, but they still want to use these sustainability practices. There has to be a cost-effective way to do it all. And my future plans are to go to Virginia Tech for engineering and graduate and hopefully work at my first engineering firm. My recommendations for future Blue Ridge kids to do this project are to start early, find what you're passionate about and try and figure out what field I would go into, because I wasn't super passionate about engineering, but I knew I liked math. And so engineering is a part of that. And so I was like, okay, I did the engineering class last year, really, really enjoyed it, decided to go there this year, talked to all these engineers, said they loved it. They said college was way harder than the actual work because the computer does everything for you here. And so you don't have to find a certain career that you're passionate about. You can just figure out what kind of fits into whatever you're passionate about. And also to start early. I already said that. Any questions? Ms. Bonovich? Right. It's difficult to do because, let's say, for example, the new elementary school, they have to have these stormwater basins. So when water rains, like while they're working or something, they'll run into that basin, and then there's little pores that they run out into the James River. And so what you can do is you can put filters into those pores instead, so that you can let more water run out, but it's filtering out the phosphorus. And so no matter how much rain comes, you're able to get it out and not disrupt that. But a filter is going to be really, really expensive. So a lot of times the sustainability portion is about like adding more, like a filter or like more solar panels into the ground. And so it's more expensive to have them turn, which gains more energy, but it also just requires more equipment. And so normally that's what it entails. But one of the things that helps also is just like the surveying portion. So before a project even starts, a surveyor goes out. And so let's say there's like a really like endangered species of like tree or animal that might live there, or a wetland. The developer would have to kind of change what he does and maybe not be able to build there for that reason. And so that part of the world will be good just because they'll be able to tell, hey, you can't build here or else you're going to have to pay a lot more money for it. But yeah, right. And so that's what they do. But if you get into the actual project, it's just adding more equipment is always going to be more expensive. And that tends to be what helps make it more sustainable.
You talked about having done part of your community service with Habitat for Humanity. What did you actually do with that?
I just went out and helped build houses, just kind of did what they told me to do. I'm not much of a house builder, so I just kind of showed up, and they were like, "Hey, go get me that," and I was like, "Okay, I'll go get that for you." So, trip. That's just what one of the projects they were working on. So he just like I met him, I walked in there, and he just pulls out this blueprint and was like, "This is a solar panel farm I'm working on." He was a cool guy, pretty blunt. He was just like, if you look through it, this is what blueprints look like, and this is how they work. Basically, he explained how it goes throughout the day, and how frustrating it was to work with the state of Virginia because they keep changing their regulations, whether it's a permeable surface or not. I forgot everything that I wanted to say.
Quick little break before we do our last few. So please get your wiggles out. And I know it's been a long time, so come back here. We'll start back up at 1:20. Right at 1:20. Yes.
So this is just for the recording. Just put that right there. And then this is the clicker. So when you're editing your slideshow, you always go down to go to the next slide, right? Down is the next slide.
Okay.
That's to help you remember. Okay, and then this is the little, and you turn it on, that would help. The little pointer if you want to use it. Okay, so down is the next slide. And then this is just hold up your mouth, talk about your story, share what you've done. You've done the hard work. Nobody knows what you're going to say. So if you forget something or mess up, we don't know. So just keep going. Skip it. That's right. Skip it. And keep breathing. Your brain needs oxygen to function. So breathe. Breathe. You'll be great. All right. My audience members. All right. Well, then next up, we have Mr.
Hello everyone. As you heard, my name is Cooper DeWitt, and I'm doing my senior project on marketing youth sports. So the reason that I chose this topic is I've been involved with sports pretty much since I could walk. I've played every sport available. I've watched sports, and it's been a big interest in my life. And in terms of my career, I've always been interested in business and marketing. So I figured, why not combine the two and see if I could find something interesting. So in my research, the question that I wanted to ask is, how does playing sports benefit the mental health of children? And in my research, I found that there were three kind of main areas of benefit. And the first one of those is that it helped to, as you can see down here, reduce stress and build up confidence, because when you're in a competitive environment or a team environment, you're building yourself up with others, and it can also provide an outlet to reduce a lot of stress in your life, and it can kind of take your mind off of things. And the second one is that in sports, you build a lot of social skills and interaction skills that you might not get in the rest of your life. And a lot of the studies that I found pointed to the fact that it can reduce your social anxiety and social problems as you develop and grow in your youth. And later on in life, a survey that I found surveyed parents of children who were heavily involved in sports. And they felt that their children got taught skills through sports that they couldn't get anywhere else, and that would help their future education and careers in the rest of their lives. So for my internship, I partnered with the Richmond Strikers, which is a pretty large youth sports organization in Richmond. And my mentor was Blaze Bird. She is the director of marketing and the director of the rugby program for Strikers. So my internship focused a lot on the youth rugby program and helping to develop and grow it. In my internship, as you can see by this way too big looking Excel spreadsheet, one of my roles was trying to push high school rugby players to play in college. So my way of doing that was to build a database of information with scouts and coaches and all types of people that are involved in college rugby. So anyone who plays in high school and wants to continue their career will have the opportunity to do that. So I spent pretty much all of my day emailing and calling college coaches trying to find recruitment sites or forms that they could fill out that would help them. And after I completed, well, enough of my hours, I'm still working on it, but we have over 150 colleges in the database with the information filled out. The second part of my internship was more on the marketing side. I managed a lot of sponsorships and promotions for the Richmond Strikers soccer tournaments. And one example of that is I reached out to the local businesses in the Richmond area when the Strikers were hosting a tournament. And we kind of created these souvenir bags with coupons and gift cards and deals for local businesses. And the benefit of that is both ways. Richmond Strikers gets money to fund their tournaments and sports teams. And the local businesses will have new influxes of customers from other areas. So for my community service, I wanted to focus on trying to get as many younger children involved in rugby because a lot of youth sports across the board are declining in participation. And a lot of the research that I found pointed to the fact that if people start playing at a younger age, they're more likely to continue and a lot of the mental health benefits increase. So the way that I did that was I organized free rugby clinics around Richmond that would help teach a lot of young kids ages 4 through 9 the basics of the sport and also a lot of teamwork and social skills. So at the clinic, I partnered with professional rugby players and coaches and former players to run the clinic because I am by no means a professional. So there were around 30 to 40 kids, I think, in total. And I would say after the 2 hours of the clinic, they all knew each other's names. They were all friends already. And I think it was 34 maybe. But out of the 34, I think at least 25 of them registered to play. So that is good. The rest of my community service hours, I spent trying to raise funds to support the young rugby teams. So that's from ages 4 all the way through elementary school because a lot of the funding just goes to the upper level high school teams. So I worked with some of my friends who were on the high school rugby team, and we organized a fundraiser where we picked up a lot of stuff after a field hockey tournament at the Richmond Convention Center. And it took us about 5 hours. And we raised, I think it was $2,500 or $5,000 for the youth rugby program. And that is enough to fund all their equipment and jerseys that they need. So the significance of my project is in the internship part. In the past few years, in the Richmond Strikers, there haven't been a lot of people that have continued to play all the way through college. And I mean, there's been like, these 6 are probably the only ones in the past 2 or 3 years.
But this year, almost every senior that's not going to play football somewhere will be going to a college to play rugby. So I think that is the direct impact of having a lot of accessible information that's readily available. My community service, these are a lot of the kids that were at the clinic. This is them at a tournament that they participated. Pretty much before this year, they haven't been able to consistently field a team because they haven't had enough people to enroll. And this year now, Richmond Strikers is able to have a team in every age bracket from 4 to 18. And I think that a lot of the importance of this is based on the research. A lot of these children will now have an outlet for the rest of their high school or professional lives. If they feel mental health struggles or they have anxiety, this can be an outlet. And while they're still playing at a young age, they can develop social skills and teamwork. If I had to look back at my project and give advice to anyone, I would say the two most important things are managing your time and communication. Because I am terrible at time management, and I let this happen to me where I kind of got behind on all my hours, and I was panicking and I didn't really know what to do. So my advice would be get ahead of your work early, communicate with a mentor in a field you're interested in, and as soon as you find someone, keep emailing them, ask for any opportunity you can, because the more that you talk to them and the more that you get ahead of your work, you can build a better relationship with them. And I kind of figured that out later on. And as you build a relationship with them, a lot of these people that you work with, your mentors, can become professional connections if you choose to work in that field. So my future plans, I will be attending the University of Virginia in the fall, studying commerce and focusing on marketing. And hopefully in my career, I can work in somewhere in sports and business or marketing, but then also continue to work with a lot of youth sports programs wherever I may end up and try to continue what I started here in the rest of my life. So if any of you have questions.
Talk about mental health with the children, or was it more of a byproduct?
It wasn't directly, but a lot of the drills and games that we focused on involved communication and teamwork. And that, as I saw a lot in the research, can help to reduce social anxiety for a lot of young kids. So we tried to indirectly teach them about mental health in a way that was more enjoyable than this presentation probably is.
Thank you for the database you put together.
Mhm.
I love that. Is that a database for the students to be able to contact the college folks themselves, or what was the use of the database?
Originally, yes. We wanted the high school players who are going into their senior year or in their senior year to be able to look at a list and contact them. But it also works both ways because now we have connections with a lot of college coaches. So they know if they need players to look here because there's a lot of talent. Yeah. Yeah. Probably not, but you know, I might do a club sport or something. Yeah.
Like, so you had to go around Richmond and ask for donations, like the bag.
Yeah, there were a couple that the strikers I've worked with before, so we kind of organized it. A lot of local restaurants or sporting goods stores, like Dick's Sporting Goods, was a big part of it. So we kind of wanted it to be relevant to the tournament and something that a team could do. So I reached out to as many as we needed once we had used up all of our existing partners. Yeah. Yeah, it was not fun to do at all. Okay.
I am so proud of you. This is just. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It wasn't your fault. No, I got static. Like
And this is the clicker.
I shared it with you. At the beginning of class, I shared it with you. Swear on my life, I shared it with you. And Miss Elliott, I shared it with her too. It's share and then present. Okay.
All right. So this is the pointer.
Uh-huh.
If you want to use that. And then when you do your slide presentation and you're editing it, you always go down to go to the next slide, right?
Mhm.
So we always go down to go to the
Okay.
next slide. That's just to help you remember that, okay?
Okay.
And then here's the microphone. Keep it up here so that you can hear it. Otherwise, we won't be able to hear you.
Okay.
And just remember, you've done the hard work. Now
Yeah.
you're sharing your story, okay?
Yeah.
And I don't know the script in your head, so and neither does anybody else. So if you miss something or forget it, move on, okay?
Yeah.
And keep breathing. Your brain needs oxygen. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? And just share your story.
Is it already on?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
All right, everybody. Next up, we have Miss Julie Miller.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Willard. I did my project on early childhood education, like elementary school. I chose this project. I chose this project because for a while I've been considering what I want to do for my career, and I keep going back to like, oh, I want to help kids, and I want to, be with them during like their young developmental stages, and I don't know, be a teacher. So my research question was the most effective teaching technique? So there's like a bunch of different teaching styles that a lot of preschool and like kindergarten classes, especially in like daycare where it's separate from elementary. There's like Montessori, Waldorf, high scope, where they're different focuses that they're using to help the kids learn. So my research is looking at what is most effective when like making a early elementary curriculum. I worked with Randolph Elementary and the Children's Museum of Richmond for my project. For my internship, I worked with Randolph Elementary. I worked with Miss Elizabeth Alvis and her kindergarten students, and that's their class. I really enjoyed getting this experience because it was nice to get into like a classroom and see these kids over and over again, so they weren't new kids every time, and see the effect that I had. And something that I learned while I was here is how important like their home life before coming to school for the first time ever is. So COVID-19 was really important, and the social emotional skills, which because of the pandemic are not as great as classes before. So they might like have trouble making friends or have trouble trusting like adult figures, that type of thing. And home life, like childhood trauma and parent situation. It all goes into how they need to be taught in the classroom. And then my mentor was Miss Elizabeth Alvis. I really enjoyed getting to work with her, and I was really grateful. She taught me a lot. She was my expert for my expert interview. And she really included me in all her lessons and explained everything to me, which I really liked because I got to see what exactly went into making every choice and what she was teaching the children. And then for my community service, I worked with the Children's Museum of Richmond. And their main focus is teaching children through play. So the children are playing at these they've got like the food, like the restaurants and like those little like houses that the kids will play in. And a big like push that they do there is teaching the kids without really like teaching them. It's like putting vegetables in their desserts. And that was like really important. And another thing that I really liked about the Children's Museum that they really stressed when I got there was how important inclusivity is and accessibility in each of their activities. So something that they had that I thought was really cool is like they have these scissors that don't have handles. So they can be used by like left-handed people or right-handed people. For kids, like scissors are really hard. Even me, like scissors, pretty hard. And they've got grips for that you can attach to their like pens and markers and things for children with low grip strength. And like all their activities are wheelchair accessible, which I thought was really, really cool because a lot of places like have to fight for accessibility in that way. So they're just really, like they really stress it. And before I forget, because this one was important, they have like for kids with learning disabilities or like social disabilities like autism and all that, they've got like different sensitivity like days where they'll shut it down for like only kids with like this type of thing, so they can get like sensory backpacks free given to them by the Children's Museum, which come with like headphones or like, I don't know, like different like sensory things that'll help children. And I thought that was really, really cool because they've got like, yeah, I thought it was really cool. And then with the Children's Museum, I worked with Allie Meager. She was like the volunteer director. She just like taught us what to do and how to talk to the kids. Like something that she thought was really important is not like saying no directly to kids, like saying something that they're doing is wrong, but redirecting them so that they don't feel like they've done anything wrong. They just want but you want to make sure they know that there's a different way to do something, which I thought was cool. And then my significance, I don't want to put myself on a pedestal, but every like authority figure in children's lives.
Good afternoon, Bulldogs. Travel time for Bulldog Block has ended. Students should currently be in their Bulldog Block locations for the day. All 12th grade students with early release should have exited the building. Only students with a pass to the restroom are permitted in the hallway. Thank you for your cooperation and enjoy the remainder of your day.
Every authority figure in like the developmental stages of childhood is really, really important in who they grow up to become. So you want to make sure that like there's positive influences all throughout their lives. And I was glad to be that. And also something that I forgot before, but in Miss Alvis's classroom, she's got children like in kindergarten, it's at that stage like before, like right when things become noticeable, like if someone has some learning disability or something social that needs to be like noticed before they go on to future classes, like IEPs and things like that. And in Miss Alvis's class, she's got a couple of kids who
maybe are performing at a lower level or are acting different socially. And I felt grateful that I could see that in the classroom so that I could learn about what that specifically was like. But the children were so wonderful, like no complaints. But I felt good to like be a positive impact on their lives. And then the personal impact. Firstly, I became way better at like communication and way better with children, which is good if I want to, be around children. I also learned that I don't think I want to become like a kindergarten teacher that early, because I got sick so often, which really was not super fun. So I want to be around, if I end up in an education field, I want to be around kids who maybe wash their hands a little bit more, or so that was good to know before I like go to college for that. And then advice that I would give to future Blue Ridge students, pick something that you're passionate about, because when I first started, I had a different topic, and it was really hard to become motivated to finish my work and like actually do what I wanted. And then when I switched, it was like a light switch, because I suddenly like felt connected to my project. And then if I could go back and do something differently, I'd probably not procrastinate as much, or feel more confident in myself, because I felt like I was held back by how insecure I was about completing my work and doing my project and speaking to adults. So yeah. And then next year, I plan to go to University of North Carolina at Wilmington. I have an undecided major right now, but I'm looking forward to going there anyways, and hopefully I'll figure it out. Thank you. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so before my topic was marine biology, which I still think is pretty cool. And always in the back of my head, like since I can remember, I've kind of wanted to like work with kids or be like a kindergarten teacher or elementary school teacher. But the thing about that is no offense, they don't make a lot of money. So I like didn't want to do my project on that to begin with. So I was like, okay, well, I'll look at marine biology because it's cool. But then I started doing work on it, and I just like didn't feel like it was helpful to me, or I felt like it was kind of pointless. And then I realized like maybe I should shift to something else because that wasn't working. And I always had like the backup to be an elementary school teacher. So I was like, well, that's fun and I can do that. And I feel good about doing that. So I switched my topic and I felt better about it. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm sure you found that through all of these experiences that effective teaching techniques really depends a lot on the student and the lesson and the content. But what did you find were some of the most effective techniques in the classroom?
A lot of what like teaching like in this stage of life is like you've got to tell it them like a million times, which is like another like patience is so important, and I also don't feel like I've got a whole ton of that. But you've got to repeat like what you're teaching them over and over and over again until they get it. And when you teach kids something new, you have to relate it back to something that like they already know, because you've taught it to them over and over again. And that was really important. And then also like environmental learning, so like going outside and seeing how what they're learning in the classroom relates to the real world, because when you relate it to a situation that they understand and they recognize, it helps them learn it a lot better than if you're just, making something up and hoping they understand. So yeah, relating it back and then repetition, important.
Yeah, mine wasn't a question so much as an observation. You seem to get excited about some of the aspects of your experience that were related to accessibility for maybe students with disabilities or kids who are struggling a little bit. And I just kind of wanted to bring that to the forefront. You don't want to be a kindergarten teacher, but I'm wondering if you want to be a special education teacher.
Yeah, I Miss Alvis actually brought that up when I went to my internship. She noticed that I guess I was good with the kids who were having more trouble, and I enjoyed spending time with them. So I have considered like going into like special education or something of that sort.
Whatever field that you go into, I feel like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that microphone dying? I noticed it's red now. The light. Oh, I thought it was green at first. Oh.
And so it's just whichever. It's the color.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you put the microphone.
Yeah.
And then
I noticed that.
so this is the little pointer thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you do your slideshow, when you're editing it, you always go down to go to the next slide, right?
Yeah.
That's the down button right here. Next is down. Just so you can remember that. Okay.
All right.
And so you take it to the best you can. Share your story. This is you've done all the hard work.
Yeah.
Share it.
I know.
And if you don't know what you were going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just my experience in this season. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Garrett Eastwood, and I did my internship about solar power, which I call the sun's gift. So a little background about me is I've always been a car guy. I've always dreamed about working on cars of my own and building them. And just recently, one of my best friends bought a 1993 240SX, and it needed a lot of work. And I found out that I was really good at the mechanical aspect of it, pulling parts off, putting them back together, understanding what all those parts did. But one problem that I found was I suck at wiring. I cannot figure it out. I had no clue how electricity even really worked. So that led me in the direction of doing something with electricity. And I've always had a small love for economics too, and I thought that solar panels were a great investment, and I'd like to advertise that. So that brings me to my research question, which is what everybody in here really wants to know. How does solar work, and is it a good investment? The first thing I'd like to get into was the first thing that I learned during my internship with Graham Everts. Is this working? Oh. Which is the path of the electron. As you can see, this is a simplified diagram of a solar panel. It's got these cells in them. They're made of silicone. The reason they use silicone is because it's a photovoltaic material, which means it's affected by the photons released by the sun. The photons released by the sun will excite the electrons and make them skip atoms into the direction of the positive end. It's magnetically attracted since electrons are negatively charged. And then they'll make their way through each cell, making their way through the whole circuit, providing your home with electricity. And then I'd get into the quality of it. There's two types of structures within the silicone. There's monocrystalline, which is the high quality structure, and then there's polycrystalline, which is a low quality structure. Polycrystalline is more of a blue tint, and the monocrystalline is much more black. And the reason you'd want to go with a monocrystalline structure is because when the electrons skip across atoms, they're able to skip in a straight line versus when they're versus polycrystalline, where they kind of zigzag a little bit and can't really make a uniform line. And monocrystalline is not commonly used because it's so much more expensive than polycrystalline. It needs to be heated up really slowly, cooled down really slowly, and they come in these heating and cooling, which forms a structure. They're sliced into thin slices, and then cut into squares, which produces a lot of waste material. But the polycrystalline, on the other hand, they still come in the same shafts, but they're heated up really quickly and cooled down really slowly, or cooled down really quickly. And then they're forged into a more square structure, so there's not as much waste material. Here are my mentors. This is Graham Everts. He works for Forum Energy Partners. They do large-scale solar fields that are capable of providing cities with electricity. And this is Ashley Crisco, who is high school friends with my dad, and he works for Redemption Energies Incorporated. And he does more of home jobs. This picture was given to me by Ashley Crisco. This is one of his most recent projects. His customer wanted solar panels on his roof, and the government also requires, Dominion Energy does not want you to produce too much electricity because they don't want to end up having to pay you for the electricity that you're providing. So they'd much rather you stay within their own guidelines, or else they won't pay you for it. So you can only put a certain amount of solar panels on one roof, and you also must have a 3-foot walkway around the whole roof. So they complied with all those rules and regulations and came up with that plan, which is what was used on this man's roof. Here's one of the products used by Redemption Energies. This is the Hanwha Q cell, which is what most people go with. It's the best bang for your buck. It comes in 385 to 405 watts and is really just an all-around great cell. And here's the Hiku Black Monoperk, which is also used by Redemption Energies. These are 20% more cost, but it only provides 5% more efficiency. So most people do not use this, but some do because they can use it as a tax write-off. And here's the product that spiked my interest the most. This is the Enphase IQ8 microinverter. When I was dealing with my first section of the internship with Graham Everts, he showed me the inverters, which were about the size of these desks, and they were massive. But these inverters are in a module about the size of your phone, and they're individually attached to each panel. And the reason they use these is because if one inverter goes out, you still have all the other inverters working and you're only losing one cell, versus on a whole field, which is all attached to one inverter. If that inverter goes out, you lose power from that whole field, and it can be costly. So you may ask, why go solar? And one thing I've learned was it's a great investment. You're pretty much guaranteed to make back the money that you spent. Plus, the government pays for 30% of your total bill from the solar company because they want to encourage you to go solar. Here's a picture of me in front of my neighbor's solar panel. I went over to their house and I interviewed them about their experience with their solar panels, and they said that their solar, or their power bill has gone down to $7 or $8 a month, and they've already made back the money that they've spent within 15 years of ownership. And here's a 30-year warranty provided by Redemption Energies. And they will cover all maintenance costs that are due to defunctions in the product. Here's Ashley Crisco's information if you want to ask more about it. What I learned about myself, I learned that if I can connect with my mentor, I'm able to learn a lot more. I was able to really learn a lot from Ashley Crisco since I've known him since he was friends with my dad. And he really seemed to want to help me out a lot more since he knew me on a personal level. And I also learned from Ashley that I have a love for economics. He recommended a few books to me, which I've started reading, and I've learned so much about economics, and I'd like to take that in the future. If I had the chance to do it again, I would definitely have kept my ideas more broad and reached out to a lot more people I knew, because I feel like I wasted a lot of time not being able to figure out who I was gonna intern with. And it could have been Ashley a long time ago, and I could have had this whole thing done early on. My future, I'm going to VMI for mechanical engineering, and I will most likely not be using the stuff I learned about solar in my future, but I'm glad I was exposed to engineering diagrams and I learned more about economics, which I will definitely be using. Now I open the floor to any questions. It was hard for me to find a community service project, but I was speaking with Ashley about it, and he said he reached out to Dominion, who unfortunately didn't respond, but we're looking for, they provide services where they can decrease the cost for individuals who want to put solar but can't quite afford it yet. And there's also governmental programs that I'm looking into. So initially, I've seen an average about $50,000, including tax, including the panels, including work, framing, everything. But the government does pay for 30% of that. So I see it rate drop down to about $30-something thousand. And they offer really good financial plans. They, throughout 10, 25, 30 years, that can, and these solar panels are pretty much pay off what you paid for it.
Mine's more of an observation than a question. I'm just impressed, like you've obviously learned a lot about solar, not only how the technology works, but when you started in knowing that you're going an engineering pathway, I expected to be pretty technical, but you're talking marketing.
Yeah, I definitely shifted more into that zone.
Yeah, and so just something, if that's what you're passionate about, just wonder about your major.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Last but not least, right?
No, last and least.
No. Hold it up here so we can hear you.
All right. Is it on?
It's on now.
All right. And
then this is the pointer.
Right.
So that one right there. And then when you do your slideshow and you're editing your slideshow, you go down, right? The next slide is always down.
So down.
Push down.
All right, last but not least, Mr. Nathaniel
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathaniel Puckett, and my topic is on engineering the environment. So first off, you might be wondering, what is engineering the environment? So I asked myself the same question when doing this project because I honestly didn't know what it was either. So I looked online. Here's a pretty good definition. Environmental engineering is a branch of engineering which uses practical sciences in order to address environmental issues. And this can be from preventing climate change to maybe just planning out where you're going to plant stuff in a building residential zone, or it could just be something small like solar panels, like the last presentation. And why am I doing this topic in particular? Well, I think that environmental engineering is a very important branch of engineering for the future because of one really specific big reason: climate change. Scary. Now, this is dramatic unless you live in California, but climate change is pretty much the gradual heating up of the Earth, and currently, from pre-industrial temperatures, we're at about 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial temperatures. So that's going to continue to go up. And we'll see that later in a graph. But next, you're probably asking, what is my research topic? So I didn't exactly have a burning question, more of a burning thought. And that was, we see all these things in the news about how climate change is happening and how, oh, we got to remove CO2 levels, but nothing about preventing the effects of climate change. Nowhere is there anyone talking about how the heat from climate change could damage infrastructure or were there going to be increased rainfall. So here is, as promised, the temperature change over the years, starting from 1880. This, you can see it's about a little bit of average there. And as you can see, from about 1940, it has continually gone up to about 1 degree Celsius. And it is going up, I believe it is 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade, which doesn't seem like a lot. But considering it was, before that, it was 0.1 degrees Celsius per decade. So the rate is going up. And here we have another effect of climate change. This increased temperatures are going to cause more extreme precipitation events. You all know the water cycle. Heat makes water evaporate, water rains down. And that is seen in our area. Obviously, we didn't get much snow recently, so that you can blame climate change for that. But we're going to be experiencing more rainfall over here. And what extreme precipitation means is that not just rain, but also extreme droughts here, which means that they're going to get extreme lack of precipitation. And so here we have the sea level rise within Virginia. This is from 1950 to about 2016, and that is about 14 inches of sea level rise, a little over a foot. And this can lead to a variety of different problems. The first and most obvious is floodplains, which that's going to be increased. And a second one is, as seen as in a previous presentation, erosion is an issue. So more sea level rise, more extreme weather events, more erosion. And so how do we solve this? How do we solve this issue? Well, that's not this presentation. Here is how we prepare for these changes. We need to update our guidelines and regulations regarding climate change. We need to account for this increase in heat, this increase in rainfall, this increase in erosion, and we need to prepare for it. Because if we don't prepare for it, well, we're just going to have a bunch of flooding and a bunch of cracked infrastructure and just not going to be good. Which brings me to the second part: repair and replace aged infrastructure. So I did my internship, I'll talk about this later, but with a stormwater engineer of 20 years. And he talked about how aged infrastructure is going to be an extreme issue because like 100 years ago, were they really considering climate change when they were building these pipes? No. So these are going to like flood. They're going to lead to not enough water going through, getting out, and just flooding. I don't know if there's been like a small increase in these flood events, and it's just not good. And another one, which you've probably heard very often when regarding climate change, is planting trees. Planting trees not only takes CO2 out of the atmosphere, but it also reduces wind speeds in hurricanes and other extreme weather events. And also, it helps prevent erosion because the roots in the roots going down into the soil help to keep the soil in place for more time, and it can withstand more erosion and like more water, so less erosion. And here's my internship. I did my internship here with the Goochland County Department. I did mine specifically the land development and environmental department, and Goochland County Environmental Land Department. Sorry, and there I worked with my mentor Ron, who, like as mentioned earlier, stormwater engineer of 20 years. And there, the first day I go in, I expect to be taught maybe some very basic things. He pulls out this. Do you think I understand this? No. So he had to explain this to me over the course of a few hours. So first day I learned what this is. This is a plan. This is what he sees on a day-to-day basis. He sees, we have here, this is not his job, but these are the elevation lines. You have the building itself, the infrastructure, and I don't know if it's on here, but he mostly deals with the stormwater basins and the stormwater collection and, like I said, evacuation. I don't know what a good word for that is, but he deals with that aspect of it. And so he taught me a lot about that. And that's what I used a lot when doing my research. He was very, very kind person, and I would recommend to any other Blue Ridge students who might be watching that you go talk to him if you want to do a internship regarding this topic or a similar topic. So my community service was done with the James River Association. I have not finished yet, but I have my hours planned out, and I've already done one session where I got to remove invasive species. This is called wild garlic mustard. No, it does not taste like garlic, nor does it taste like mustard. And quite a lot of it over the course of 2 hours. And this is an invasive species brought over from Europe a while back, and it spread from New York all the way across the US. And it's an invasive species, so it's not good for the local habitats. It might cause competition, it might just take away space. It's generally not good. And so what did I learn during this whole presentation? Well, I learned how to communicate properly. I learned how to find internships, find community service. I learned how to dress professionally, as I am now. I learned how to make a presentation that looks decent, I hope. And I learned a lot about climate change too. I forgot to mention one thing. After this, I'm going to go to Virginia Tech. I actually just accepted my offer last night. Yippee. And I'm going to be majoring, well, not in engineering, but in physics. So while I may not be taking climate change head on specifically, I will keep it in mind during my career and my time at Virginia Tech. I might even do some volunteer work to combat climate change. Additionally, I want to advocate, like my significance right now is not that community service. That community service, while removing those invasive species was a positive thing to do, it's gonna come back. My significant impact is me talking to all of you here today about climate change. And if I can just implant a little seed of information in all of your heads, that maybe you'll become more informed. You'll maybe choose to volunteer here the next time you're forced to volunteer. Sorry, Blue Ridge. And maybe you'll go into a field that deals with climate change. So that is my significance here today to all of you. Thank you all for watching. I am sorry you had to sit through that. Oh, that's right, questions, I forgot. Any questions? Yes.
What was the plan for disposing of the invasive?
I think they might have incinerated, or they might have. The community service, I guess the mentor made a joke about how it tastes good, and so maybe we'll eat some. You know, you don't know. Olivia? Well, something that I've been thinking of is that as time goes on, we do ways to innovate and make things cheaper. So by preventing this and by researching this, we can find ways to prevent it without increasing costs too much, hopefully. And as of right now, awareness is the best thing. Like maybe some of you can donate to good causes that fight climate change. But in terms of infrastructure research, that is something that has to be done over a period of time. And the funding, yeah, it is going to be costly. But we have the government to thank for some of that, private organizations, and private homeowners who might choose to fight it themselves. Anyone else? Georgia? Well, I think right now, well, if we don't have the technology to put in if we don't have new technology put in, I think it's best for right now to just put in a better version of what's there today. Like if a stormwater pipe is only, I don't know, 10 inches in diameter, you want to increase that to 15. And it's a Band-Aid, pretty much. It's a Band-Aid that we're going to need to fix again later on. Anyone else? Oh. I don't know. I didn't try it, but you can. Oh yeah, just go down to Chapel Island to go pick some.